Welcome to the Fourth Step Podcast. On each episode, we interview recovering addicts and learn their story with addiction. Through exploring personal journeys, we get a glimpse of the depths addicts fall to and their path in recovery. We hope you enjoy the episode. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Fourth Step Podcast. My name is Kevin, and I am an addict.
Hello, Kevin.
Hey, Kevin.
Hi, guys. With us today is our friend Ryan.
Hello.
Hi, Ryan.
Oh, hi, Ryan.
Yeah.
Who are you?
You ever been to a meeting? You know how the process goes.
Hi, my name's Ryan. I'm an addict.
Hey, he's catching on quick.
Yes. That's my sponsor.
Yeah.
I'm Greg, and I'm an addict.
Hi, Greg. And Greg, you are Ryan's sponsee.
Correct. Yeah.
And how long you been his sponsee?
About 2 years now. A little over 2 years.
2 years. So that's a lot.
Something like
That's
that.
a lot of time working together. You kind of figured each other out.
It feels like a lot longer.
Cool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, today is a very special episode because it's the first episode of season 2.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and we're really, I really appreciate you guys coming out and doing this today.
Thanks for the invite, man. That's cool.
Yeah, and this is also a special episode because we're doing a sponsor and a sponsee working a 4-step together.
Oh,
That's great.
Yeah, so we're going to get some dirt from both you guys. It's going to be exciting.
cool.
I have plenty.
Yeah, some dirt.
Yeah, I got
Yeah,
plenty
no,
of it.
don't share his stuff.
No, I
But
said
can
I
I
have
share
my
his
own.
stuff?
Oh, good.
I'm not talking
share
about
his
his.
Yeah,
That's what we're going to do.
you're
Right?
allowed to, right?
Yes.
Because you're the sponsee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that how it's worked?
That's
It's in
usually
the
how it
literature
goes.
too.
Yeah.
No,
What page is that
it's
on?
not in the literature.
Okay.
Don't misquote me. We got a couple of housekeeping things. So this year, each episode is going to be sponsored, and we have an engineer that's standing by to work on this episode, and also the format that we're using this year is going to be rotating. Like we'll do sponsor, sponsee, and some other new ideas. On whatever platform you listen to the podcast, you should be able to have a comment button after each episode when you drill down into that, and you can leave us a text message and it'll get to us and we can comment on air. If you support the show, there's also a subscribe button and you can donate. And I think you can donate whatever amount of money, or the least is $3 a month. So if you're interested in supporting the show, we also like to plug a couple other recovery podcasts. One is the Anonymous podcast, which our friend J-Dub is involved with, and also the Living Clean podcast, which as well does similar recovery podcast. So let's start out with your clean date.
I'm an addict. My name is Ryan. My clean date is March 25th, 2017.
So that's how many years?
Right now I have 7, coming up on 8.
Right now you have 7. I don't do math on air, so don't even try.
I'm sorry.
You can figure that out. Greg?
I'm Greg. I'm an addict, and my clean date is 7/12/21. I'm just about 3.5 years clean.
Okay, cool. I actually remember when you were new. The first time I met him was at Under the Fig Tree,
Yeah.
and he was bouncing around in the front row.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
remember
that was me.
Extra greasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was me.
So I just want to know the story, how you came to pick Ryan as your sponsor.
Well, my first sponsor was my brother-in-law. So he and I, that's how I was introduced to the rooms. My family had an intervention for me. He kind of spearheaded that event. In all my denial and good fashion, was like, fuck you guys, I can do this on my own. Ended up leaving that day. They had called and 5150'd me. I got institutionalized. I came out 10 days later, and my brother-in-law was familiar with the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, so he was like, I'm going to sponsor you until you find a sponsor.
So temporary sponsor.
I had a couple people that I had sought out, and one guy this first guy was like, "All right, you're going to read the first 22 pages." I'm like, "Nope, fuck you, guy." What is this? Read a book? So I never
wouldn't even read.
No, of course not. Nope. So I'm like, I'm never calling him again. I remember on the drive home, I deleted his number.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the spirit.
Because he asked you to read.
Yeah.
So like at that point, you still had reservations. You were unwilling.
Oh, I wasn't even an addict. I was just checking a box. I was doing this thing that you guys call recovery, or showing up to these meetings, so that my family knew that I was, getting clean. But then also there was a girl I was trying to get back, and I felt like this would be a good little gold ribbon. It's like, well, these are the things that I'm doing. But yeah, I certainly wasn't an addict. And, a couple months into working with my brother-in-law, I got through the first couple of steps. I mean, tapping back into that time did nothing for me. So I was like, okay, well, I, started writing these questions out, and,
I kind of disagree. It did nothing for you.
Well, that's, I'm saying that's where my mindset was at.
I got you.
So then I stopped doing any of that bookwork stuff because, it's just a bunch of questions. Like let's just talk about it, but then there was someone that
Newcomers.
I did seek out for sponsorship, and he's like, well, where are you at in your steps? And I was like, got my first 2 steps done. He's like, well, even though.
Was that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And so he was like, I think you should finish with this guy if you've already started with him, you shouldn't be seeking another sponsor if you're already actively working the steps. And so it's like, okay, well then I stayed with my brother-in-law, and I worked towards, as I started approaching the completion of my first round, that's when I was like, okay, like what is it that I want? And at that point I had so many things shifted with me that it's like, I feel like I got my first opportunity at a sponsor chasing something that I wanted.
Nice.
And I saw Ryan at Polish Hall when I first came into, it's a meeting in Roseville, California. When I first came into the rooms, he was the secretary at that, so I had seen him in this role for a while, but then he had talked about working the feeling steps, and it's like, I've never really
had feelings.
Yeah.
True though.
Yeah. And so there was, that really appealed to me because I feel like after that first round, there were so many amazing things that happened. It's like, I am sold on this lifestyle. What was it about Ryan that you were attracted to his recovery, or?
I'd say it was my boyish good looks and dashing personality that usually wins them over.
That's funny.
So in reality,
no, you know what? There was a calmness to him. Like I feel like one of the things that was attractive is like, even when he would speak at meetings, he would take time to process. Wait, I'm not going to say that right now. Let me assess how I'm going to approach this situation. It seemed very collected, intentional, aware. There was awareness to that, and I it wasn't just blah, 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 just spewing off. It seemed like it was like that was what was attractive. And so I remember being like, I hope he raises his hand for the part where
they asked if they wanted to sponsor people.
Yep, and he raised his hand, and I talked to him, and he's like, well, I thought you're working with this person. I said, yes, I am. He said, well, I do have availability to do this, but, I encourage you before we do this, that you get current, you have a conversation, you share, what your intentions are, and with your current sponsor. And if you decide that you still want to proceed, I'll be on standby. And
cool.
Yeah, so I walked through that. And
did somebody do that for you? Is that how you learned that part of taking on Sponsee?
I can't recall if that happened for me.
Or you saw it, or
But
heard
everything that I've gotten in Narcotics Anonymous, none of it came from me. That's why I keep coming back and going to you guys, because you guys know things and have stuff figured out. So
No, the fact that you said, like check in with the sponsor that you have. I mean, like,
I think I've seen, and we've probably all seen, people come in and work with a sponsor and then jump sponsors,
the 1, 2, 3 shuffle.
Yeah, and I think that, honesty and vulnerability are some things that not that we only get to do it, but there's a tremendous benefit to that in terms of relationships, and I also think that a lot of people move on, and they don't bring, to me, the sponsorship relationship is very, it's very unique. It's very intimate. It's very personal. And that's where I learned to have relationships, was through sponsorship with another man.
Yeah.
And I think that, there's just, basically, it's how would I want it to go if I were the sponsor and someone were leaving? And it's like, I would want you to have a conversation. I would think that we're good enough and we're close enough, where you can say, hey, I've loved working with you, or I haven't, but I want to move on in sponsorship. And like, at the end of the day, it's, this is sponsorship. It's not dictatorship, right?
Yeah. Has somebody done that with you? A sponsee? Like, hey, I got to move on.
I have had a couple guys move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same here.
And at the end of the day, man, like, there's no ego in sponsorship. We want people to get well. We want people to grow, and we want to see people get healthy and get the benefits of what the 12 Steps of Narcotics Anonymous has to offer.
Yeah. That's been my experience is, when a sponsee says, hey, I'm going to seek out another sponsor, and said, I encourage you to follow whatever you need to stay clean. Yep. It doesn't matter. And I'm not that important. And
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing too, and whenever someone approaches me for sponsorship, I kind of have a canned response. I say, so listen, I'm open to this. I'm not saying yes, and I'm not saying no, especially if they're new. If someone's new, I say, listen, this is an important decision. And it's one that, yes, we need to get into sponsorship, but I think it's an important decision that I think requires some consideration. And not all personalities are compatible, right?
Yeah.
And when we come in and we're new, we're focused a little bit more on personalities than we are principles. We have no idea what these principles are. So I always tell people, I'm absolutely willing. Let's do this. Why don't you call me every day for the next week or two? And in the next week or two, after we get to know each other, if you still want to work steps with me, we can do that. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, I'm going to give you some numbers of some people. Both of you have gotten these calls from people that I've met in the rooms. I say, I want you to call these people. I want you to get to know these people. And what I'm really doing is, listen, sponsorship is the lifeblood of this thing we get to do, right?
Yeah.
I'm shooting numbers and names of men that I respect, that I know they would be in good hands with.
Why'd you give them mine?
Well, because I would work steps with you.
It's funny because that was one of the first things he did was like, here's 5 guys. And I'm like, well, this first one here, I've got some problems with this.
You did that?
Yeah. I'm like, he's like, he laughed. He's like, that's funny. He's like, you should call him.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yep.
I get what you're saying. But there's another perspective about like newcomers when they come in and they're seeking a sponsor. This is all stuff that I've learned after the fact, is like, like the good looking boyfriend or girlfriend or the car or the motorcycle or the house and all that stuff is attractive. And if that's what it takes for you to get a sponsor, right?
Yeah.
Because the fear is so big when you're new about like getting an old timer that's going to make you work steps. And that's my experience when I was new. I was in fear of that. Like, I want the easier, softer way. So, what I'm just pointing that out because whatever it takes to get you to start working.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And you sponsor too?
I do. Yeah.
How many sponsees do you have?
4 currently. Yeah.
That's a good number.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I've had at the most I had 8 and 7 were working, and it was
That's a lot.
it was I was treating sponsorship just like I treated the drugs. It's like, this is cool. Let me do it all the time, like, so that I have no time for anything else.
Sounds like the same with service commitments.
Yeah.
You know, people just get
Funny you say that.
It's funny you say that.
Oh wait, did you do that?
Yep. Yes, I had like seven.
It was 7.
7 different service commitments, and I remember I remember there was an addict that called me one night to go to the movies, and I'm like, I can't. I have a service commitment, and it's like, well, when can you do it? I'm like, in the afternoon. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, like, am I doing this recovery thing too much that I'm like not even allowing myself like a personal life?
A social life, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that being one of our first conversations where we're getting to know each other, and you let me know exactly how many service positions you had. And I was like, dude, well, calm the fuck down, and he was still like, well, no, this is what we do. And I'm like, okay, all
So who
right.
told you that?
Well,
Or that your own perception?
no, it was my sponsor at the time wanted me to get a couple service positions. And then, those relationships grow. He railroaded me into a few other ones, and it was like all in good fun. And then it's like, wait a minute, like, someone needed to step up. And so I stepped up here, and it's like, I got these 4, and then you railroaded me into those 2. And then I kind of felt like we need someone here. And before I knew it, it was like, oh, I didn't even know that it was an issue or that it was going on, because I had been going to a meeting a day for some time. It was really that call. It's like, hey, we're all going to go out to the movie, and we thought it'd be cool. I'm like, that's awesome, but I can't go. And then when we talked about when I might be able to go, I'm like, wow, I can't.
Was that the catalyst that had you change your perception about service
That was part of
commitments?
it. And with him too, I was, discussing how this was presenting some chaos for me, because, I wanted to do stuff with my kid, or I needed to have someone watch my kid, it's like, I'm even jeopardizing showing up in that space, So I remember it was a big deal to be like, I'm taking Mondays and Tuesdays. And I remember feeling like, so you're not going to be of service to this place anymore? It's like, no, and likely I'm not going to be coming to meetings these nights too.
Good.
It was interesting because some of the people that I was surrounded with at the time were really starting to, first it was a point of concern, and then it was like real, like, hey, like, we're worried about you. And it's
That
like,
you had too many service positions?
oh, just across the board, that it not only like now that I'm pulling away and showing up for me,
Yeah.
this was this really interesting spot in recovery where I felt like I was kind of outgrowing where I had been. And these people that were my support group, it was becoming this questioning my commitment to these things because I was finding myself back into society and like being a dad and showing up to those things. Like,
I get it.
I was taking those things as priorities over everyday meeting attendance. And
How dare you? How dare you?
it was a really interesting space.
But when you take a service position now, do you run it by Ryan?
Yeah,
no.
Greg, let's talk about this.
No.
You don't?
No.
Has anything in your past about having too many service positions, or that given you any pause to go, hey, maybe I should get somebody else's perspective on this?
So usually it's the internal turmoil so for example, like I recently work has been going really well. And when it comes to like, it's very easy for me to drop into, okay, well now that work is busy, I'm like all work, and it isn't until like the chaos of something that I start to feel that.
That's kind of normal obsessive compulsive behavior,
Yeah.
one for another.
Yeah.
Have you like had internal monologue with his decisions as a sponsor, being his sponsor?
Any sponsor does, I think, in all fairness,
I think
we get to observe the decisions and the behaviors and the consistency and here's the thing too, is like, if you spot it, you got it. So, have I seen or observed imbalance, in a sponsee's life? Yeah. And it's easy for me to identify because I don't know how to walk a tight wire. Like, balance is still, with almost 8 years, is probably one of my greatest challenges, because I'm all into this, or I'm all into that. And then, and I'll put intense focus on a particular area of my life, and another area will suffer as a result. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
it does. And I understand what you're saying. There's a part of sponsorship, the relationship that actually like makes the turn into where you're comfortable enough and you're comfortable enough with each other where the dialogue is just smooth and like, have you hit that yet? You feel?
Absolutely.
I think we hit that pretty early.
It's funny because as you're talking about the situation and balance and all that, I'm reminded of like over this last year, so when I first got into working with him, it was like, I burned through my first 12 steps, So he's like, we're going to slow it down. And it's like the internal dialogue's like, why are you holding me up, bro? Like like you're slowing this train, and so then I had these moments of like, I need to show up for me and say like, if I'm done with a step, then we're going to have to set a time, and then I had this moment where it's like, okay, well, I'm not even going to worry about that because it's going to be a while before he can sit down. So then I got stagnant and I'm like, want to blame him about it. You know what I mean? Cause it's like, well, he's slowing me down and now I found this pattern. It's like, we'll rap about these types of things where it's it's an open dialogue. Like we've certainly fell into a place where like I don't think anything's off limits.
No.
And we'll laugh at the insanity that we have. Like I'm wanting to put that on him. Check this out, bro.
Oh yeah.
I hell wanted to blame you for this, dude. And I did for like a good couple of weeks.
Yeah. Does it hit hard when he talks you off the ledge?
I don't know if there's a whole lot of talking off the ledge. I think it's gotten to a point now where I feel like when I most recently, and this was maybe 4 months ago, I was like, I'm just calling you. I'm calling you to bitch. And he's like, okay, so how do you want me to show up here? I'm like, just listen. Don't, and he's like, okay.
I like that. How do you want me to show up here?
Yeah.
So he listened and he's like, yeah, I think it sounds like you need to do a mini 10 step. And it's like, Ryan, I told you, I just wanted you to listen. I didn't want any of your bullshit assignments. And then I call him a week later. It's like, thanks for that bullshit assignment. Because what I realized is, yeah. And Ryan's like, yeah.
Dude, that's so humbling, right? It's humbling.
Oh, absolutely.
And you have enough of your confidence as a sponsor that you're able to, without fear.
Yeah.
Can you give him those suggestions without fear of his reaction?
Yeah. Well, there is no fear. There really is no fear. Because at the end of the day, like my thoughts on sponsorship are, I can't do anything to help someone. But what I can do is I can create an atmosphere of safety and acceptance and encouragement and hopefully a little bit of inspiration to get people to help themselves. And all I can really do at the end of the day is offer my experience in certain situations or circumstances and what I've done and try to ask questions. Is like, that's interesting. So what we're dealing with as a, make up example, sounds like we're dealing. I'll ask, what are the feelings? What feelings are we dealing with? What are you experiencing? And most people, they get into the story, right? Well, she did this or he did this. I'm like, no, but what are you feeling? You know, and identifying that, because I found in my practice it helps me to zoom out and separate from the intense emotional turmoil and
Drama.
catastrophizing everything and hyper personalizing everything, which I'm still fully capable of doing, but it's always been really comfortable. It's always been really easy. And honestly, I think one of the biggest benefits that I found in sponsorship that makes it easy. Like, I don't think we've ever had a single time where we've, maybe you have, where we've bumped heads or whatnot, but humor, like bringing humor into some, because we take ourselves really, really serious, right? And I got, being able to look at my stuff, and I'm glad this is about the 4th step, being able to abandon judgment and shame and self-ridicule and just look at these behaviors, which are just phenomenon, right? And go, wow, really, Ryan? It's so easy for us to identify. Yeah. It really is.
So that's interesting. You say shame, because that's one of the questions is like, did you grow up with shame and guilt? And did that have a part of you getting loaded? Like when you took that first hit and you felt that first feeling of escaping, did you correlate that with like, oh, I don't feel shame and guilt anymore? Do you remember shame and guilt?
Oh, I remember it. Yeah, I sure do. Okay. I sure do. No, I want to give an honest answer, okay. So I'll absorb the question and I'll just kind of search. But absolutely,
yeah, I recognize that, Greg. Yeah.
No, shame was was one of my superpowers, or one of the superpowers of the disease, and how it
kept you going.
And it kept me going, right? I was a victim of childhood molestation and severe physical and emotional abuse at the hands of my father, which is the person that I love the most, right? And and I do remember putting in for the first time, and what it was is unimportant, right? But I remember experiencing.
No, it's we can ask that. What was the first thing you did?
It was alcohol. It was definitely alcohol. And I remember the experience at a very young age of the anxiety, the fear, like all of the stuff from the shame, just dissolving, and me experiencing, I felt unburdened, and I often tell people that attention was my first drug of choice.
I can see that,
and that began at a very early age. Being the class clown and especially attention from the opposite sex, and that was my first drug of choice, was attention. And it made all of my insecurities seemingly disappear. It made my inadequacies, because I deal with not enoughness, and I was never tall enough or smart enough or cute enough or cool enough, and people didn't like me enough. And I remember putting in, and not just for the first time, for many times after that, I would put in, and all that not enoughness just went away, you know, and now you love me,
Do you remember shame and guilt playing a part in getting loaded?
No, quite honestly, I was unpacking that as you asked him, and in my experience, that showed up when I got clean, and that was something that was certainly probably the biggest threat to going back out. Because my truth is that I didn't experience a lot of guilt and shame. I was in such a thick denial that I was being wronged in these certain things, that those times that I lashed out in this way or that way was always a form of retaliation.
Justified?
It was justified.
You poor victim.
Yeah. And so those things didn't show up as realities until I was doing the work. And then it's like those experiences, those feelings were absolutely points of chaos where I'm like, I don't want to feel this. Yeah. And it was one of my biggest challenges with staying clean is experiencing guilt and shame, and then the decades of it.
Yeah.
So you didn't experience it until you got clean. You experienced it right away. When you say abused, that was like the core of the guilt and shame?
No, I think my first experience with shame, and I think it's important also to differentiate. Like to me, there is a difference between shame and guilt.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and it took me a while of getting clean and understanding.
So what's your perception? Is it like guilt is I am wrong and
no, guilt.
Shame is I'm wrong.
No, guilt is a good thing because it points me in the direction of some stuff I need to clean up or behaviors that I need to change. So to me,
moral
guilt
compass.
says I did something bad. Shame says I am bad.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy. You know, that's not healthy. And it perpetuates the disease of addiction and for this addict, you know, and it's not good. It gets really messy.
Yeah. See, we talked a lot about guilt and shame. And one of the big takeaways that I got from that was guilt is very strong, but guilt is usually because of something you have done to someone to wrong someone else. Whereas shame is doing something that wronged yourself. And so it's a lot harder to get forgiveness from yourself when as humans, we mess up. We all have the ability of knowing that we're not perfect. And so if I mess up to you, like we're not perfect people. We make mistakes and I can feel guilt for that. But when I have violated something of myself, like that's the difference of what I took from guilt and shame is that how do I rectify this because I didn't wrong somebody else, I wronged me. You know,
and most of all, we harmed ourselves.
Yeah, I can ask for forgiveness for someone not being perfect, but I'm supposed to know better for me. You know,
So how do you fight that?
There's
a spiritual principle you can use to fight that.
What's that?
Humility.
Ryan, I'm so proud of you. Ryan whispered humility.
You know, I would think that it's honesty and willingness too, because in my experience, the only thing that could get me through shame is the ability to bring light into that darkness, because the shame are the things that I don't want to talk about, because if I know it's wrong for me, you're certainly going to know it's wrong for me.
Yeah.
And so it's walking through shame is bringing, the secrets out, you know, because the shame are the things I don't want to talk about because they're so violating. And so when I bring another person in and I share honestly, and I'm willing to do that level of work, I can get some reprieve from it by someone else offering the forgiveness that I can't offer myself, because they can share their experience. And it's like, oh shit, like, I'm really glad that I talked about that.
There's two perceptions on guilt. This is what I personally have learned over the period that I've been clean is the first perception about guilt is what you said, is that and I equate that to moral compass, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's not a bad thing, but I specifically attach my moral compass to that feeling of that perception of guilt. And then the other thing is guilt is attached to expectations. And that's the negative part of guilt, because we can put expectations on ourselves. And if we don't hit that, we feel guilty about that. And that goes against humility, accepting ourselves with our character defects and all. That's just, that's who we are. And it's not an excuse for bad behavior. It's a relief for us to put down the bat, right? Mm-hmm. It's interesting too. Every time I do an episode, we have a language, right? Yeah. We have our own language, and even throughout like the world, our language is different inside the rooms. And you said, what did you say? Something earlier about. Something that with the language that we use is specific to like maybe California or something. I can't remember what you said, but
me neither. So there's two of us.
That's what happens when you get old. Yeah.
There's an IP for that.
Yeah. Like when we say drop a step, when we say, let's drop a step like that, you don't hear that anywhere else. No. In fact, it's probably not even said throughout the world inside NA.
So what's funny is I don't say that anymore.
Yeah,
because we don't
that's-
drop steps. And
take
Greg,
'em.
we
We
take
take 'em.
steps. Yeah,
because we don't
take
put them
steps.
down. We just move with them.
Yeah, we're not dropping anything. We're
see?
taking it.
So the language.
But I get it. But
Yeah.
when people say drop a step, if I were to visit another fellowship who shall remain nameless and anonymous, and I
Are
say
you talking about AA?
I am talking about AA.
Okay, we
you know,
don't
Hey.
you know, but there is certain language that, when I go to another house and I use that language, and I'll say sober instead of clean because
Yeah.
there is value in our traditions and their traditions, so I'm going to respect the house. I'm going to use their language. And, but I've said things like drop a step, and they know right where they know what house I came from.
Oh, really? So it is
'Cause they don't-
specific.
It is specific
Yeah.
to Narcotics
I
Anonymous.
just found that interesting because like this episode will go out all over the place, and
Yeah.
so sometimes we kind of have to discern what our language means broadly.
Let's talk about right. I've always wondered this, the word right. Is that just a Sacramento region thing, or they do that in the Bay? When you hear somebody share, right? So
That's pretty,
right. And I'm like,
pretty universal.
is it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's
Yeah, you go to
universal,
the
right?
East Coast,
Even on the
you know,
East Coast.
Yeah, even on the East Coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So there was guilt and shame, and then how did you guys work out fears? Like, what was a fear before you got loaded? Before you got clean. Did you have
well,
a fear?
It's interesting because I feel like fear has shown up a lot again since I've gotten clean.
Before you got clean, did you have a fear that they might find out who you are? That's
they?
the most. The people in the program that you're starting to hang out with.
Oh, no. I
still have that. I still have that.
You do?
Absolutely.
That we're gonna find
Absolutely.
out
That
who you
all you
are?
guys are going to see through my bullshit and realize what a fraud I really am.
But if you're honest with yourself, do you believe that you still spew out bullshit?
After I get a chance to listen to this episode, I can answer that question a little bit better. No, but that there's a little boy inside me that still, when I hear people say things, I don't care what people think about me. I have one word that goes through my head, and like bullshit. Because I think we all care, and I think it's okay to care. But I still have this, that people are going to see that I'm a fraud, or I still have this doubt. And it's really, but what I do is I share those things like I am right now, and I'll share that stuff at group level, of what's going on, what I'm feeling. I'm feeling insecure, I'm feeling fear, and my head's telling me that you guys are all going to think I'm an absolute fraud, and, the fourth step helps us to embrace vulnerability, right? And in my experience, vulnerability, being honest and open-minded and willing and practicing humility and really exposing ourselves with our belly,
You're brave.
is it brave?
Yeah.
Here's what I know. And
courage.
And my wife to be
wondering.
gave this to me years ago because I was really afraid of exposing my belly, especially in a romantic relationship. And she said, yeah, babe, but if you're afraid to expose your belly because you're afraid you're going to get slugged in the gut or you're going to get stabbed. But if you don't expose your belly, you also don't get belly rubs. And who doesn't love a good belly rub? So to me, it's worth the risk,
Yeah.
But today, do you still feel that way? Like fear
It still
of
pops up. It's still-
vulnerability?
it's still, the tendencies are there. The feelings are there. And I don't know if they're ever going to disappear,
I have a question about that.
Okay.
In your past, have you ever gotten vulnerable and have that information used against you?
Absolutely.
So do you feel, looking back now, do you feel that has something to do with your fear of being vulnerable?
That's most likely, that's highly likely. And today too, I have, 6-7 years ago, I didn't have the expansive network of people that I know I'm safe with. Mm-hmm. Right. And I had to bump my head, was open to pursuing new relationships with men, with women, in the fellowship and outside the fellowship with all the muggles in the real world. You guys call them
Civilians.
normies, you call them civilians. I call them muggles, because they don't have the magic we do.
We're at war. It's a disease.
Yes.
But I had to bump my head a few times, and I had to get hurt. And now here we are that I know exactly. I have a small army of people that
that you're safe with,
and I expose my belly. Yeah.
Did you have that experience with the same situation?
So, it's my group, my circle is pretty intimate. But I guess what you're talking about, it's like coming to fear. It's like my biggest fear, it has to be that I'm going to show up differently because of a situation. So for example, like we talked a lot about vulnerability and like the power of authenticity, like being your truest self.
Yeah.
And vulnerability, when we share vulnerably, it can be a scary thing, but when someone sees vulnerability happening, it's a very powerful thing. So where's the line? Like when we see that vulnerability, it's super powerful, but when we're the one being vulnerable, it feels very weak, and it's just dropping the notion that it's different for us,
Yeah.
We were working a lot through some of the stuff with my ex-wife and courts and custody, and I would have responses to these things because I, would have, like it's just interactions, and it's like, I would say hi because my kid's there, and try to show up personable for him, and then she not respond with a hi back, and it's like, oh, this fucking bitch. And then like all of a sudden how this person has shown up, I have surrendered my ability to be my most authentic self because I'm showing up this way.
Yeah.
Because this person is showing up like this, right? And like I'm allowing that to dictate how I show up. You know
what I call that? Taking on somebody else's character defect.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, well, that's probably the biggest fear is for me is like, I don't want to show up differently for this person or for that person or for that person because I know who that person is. I related it to when we worked through that stuff with my ex-wife is like, she'll push every button that I got. And he's like, why give her a button? And it's like, damn it. And I correlated that into, okay, there are people that we meet in the rooms that I will have an opinion about, and then I'm not so hip to be like, hey, buddy, and go and give a hug to. But like, that is allowing, like, taking on someone's defect is like, like, I guess that's probably one of the biggest fears. And then I kind of, if I look under that umbrella, is allow situations and experiences to change how I am, like I have fears that I will be run by a situation.
Yeah.
And not.
That sounds like you learning the difference between responding and reacting.
Yeah.
So that specific situation about the other person, especially if it's in the rooms, we're not required to be best friends with everybody in the rooms, right? Oh. And we've learned over the years that some people are not safe for us.
Yeah.
For us.
Right.
Right.
I can love you, but love you over there. Right.
Right. So I get what you're saying, and that perception rings true for a lot of people.
Yeah. It's funny because I was talking to Ryan about the situation, and as an addict, the pendulum swings, right? So I'm telling him I am in like aggressive pursuit of like not being like that, and he's like, what about gentle acceptance? Like, it's like, damn, I am like hella over indexing.
Yeah.
It's like, because then I'll be really hard on myself about like, nope, I can't have feelings. And it's like, we're allowed to have feelings, you know?
Can't stop them from coming.
There's always
you know?
something to work on, you know?
Same with thoughts. Can't stop them from
Can't
coming.
stop them at all. Yeah.
No. So fears, you have any other fears like that you act out on today? For the audience, let me point out that Ryan is wearing a shirt that says "fuck around and find out."
Yes.
And that's his motto. Like since, a couple years ago when we kind of started hanging out, that's been his motto. Fuck around and find out. I like it.
We always do. We always
if you're
do.
a good soldier like us,
know.
then
He
yeah,
uses
we're gonna
it.
fuck
He
around.
uses it as he's like, well, what do you think about this? Like, well, I encourage you to. You could do all the fucking around you want,
Yeah.
but you should be prepared for how you might find out.
Yep.
As long as you can find out and not go out, you can fuck around all you want.
Yep.
Yeah. My first sponsor would say, yeah, everything is possible for you as long as you're willing to pick up the tab.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want.
Yep.
Pick up the tab. So you have that fear today of anything else?
Fear always, it's a lot more subtle today, obviously. When I first got clean, it was very overwhelming, and I spent the first year, maybe 2 years in what I call image management,
Wait, explain that.
Image management, where I would go out of my way to convince other people that Ryan was okay and that Ryan was confident and that Ryan is principled and Ryan is freaking all this shit, instead of Ryan's just Ryan. And sometimes, Ryan's usually loving, Ryan's usually principled, but Ryan's also human and Ryan's going to bump his head. And if anyone's going to piss you off, like there's a pretty high probability that it'll be Ryan. If we're close in relationship,
Yeah.
especially if we're close in relationship and I see you headed for the cliff, Ryan's that guy. Like I'll swerve out of my lane. I will swerve out of my lane to help you from going off the cliff, and
So you play the savior a little bit?
I call it the vigilante. I have a little vigilante inside me.
Oh.
Because most of all, we harm ourselves, and and this is more with new people. Because when I was new, I had it all figured out. I knew it all. I read all the things, and but yeah, as long as we're willing to fuck around, we also have to be equally as willing to find out.
Are you willing to pick up the tab, Greg?
Yeah. Yep. And most of the tabs that I pay today is internal chaos. My first night step, even this second one we did, it's like I remember being really excited to do 9, and then when it happened, I'm calling him in tears in the parking lot. It's like, this is the worst thing I ever did. I'm not doing this. And it's like, well, just remember that when you're on the front end of a problem, it's easier to deal with these things, and so, most of the time it's like, I really need to unpack what, because my feelings happen and then I get clicked into a different lens. It's like it's like getting your eyesight, it's like, does this look good or does this look good? It's like when that's there, I see something that's different than when I'm in a different lens.
So change of perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the emotion can be that lens,
Okay.
As we walk through these different things, it's like, here's my feeling, and now my brain wants to validate what that is. So my thought patterns are in that lens of emotion, For example, I wake up late and I got to take my kid. It's like the initial thing is fear. And then so fear becomes anger because it's like, now I want to control this. Get ready to, it's like,
Yeah, that's a reaction, right?
right. So then I go out to the car and I forget my keys inside, which happens often. Fuck. it's like all of a sudden this is like level 10 because I'm already actively blah, 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 blah of all the things based upon the emotion, you know? And so it's, you know, how can I observe these things, feel these things, but observe them? Like I remember it was really instrumental for me one day when I missed a turn. I was running to a job and then I was late and I hit traffic, and it's like I got so angry. And then I wanted to blame my sponsees for having their stupid calls every day which is not something that bothers me, but I wanted to blame it on that. I'm in that lens. And all of a sudden, like, I zoomed out from the situation. It was crazy. It was a really pivotal moment for me and I started laughing on the phone, and my sponsee's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I think so."
I remember this.
But I am really angry right now, like swing on people angry. And I'm realizing I can feel anger, but I don't have to be angry. Like,
So you can feel the feeling and not react.
and not be it.
Yeah.
Not be it. Yeah. And it was really interesting to observe my experience. It was like an inside out. Best way I explain it is like that, like when if you've seen The Matrix, the bullets are getting shot and all of a sudden they slow down, and it's like those are the thoughts racing at me. It's like I don't have to listen to that thought, and I don't have to listen to that thought, and it's like, wait a minute, put my hand up and like stop the thoughts, the bullets, and be like, no, I'm not participating.
Good.
And the feeling will pass if I,
Yeah.
a really interesting inside out of body experience.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a good story. Yeah, I mean, it's not often that we get the chance to like actually visualize ourselves going from reaction to response.
Yeah.
You know,
Powerful.
Because
That's whether I got one of the best, greatest gifts I've gotten from the program is we hear people describe it in different ways. The pause,
yeah, I love that one too.
And it's all the same thing, but there's that pause is a space. There's a space in between stimulus and response, and the longer I can make that space, and Greg said zooming out, and in Living Clean, it describes spirituality as having a relationship with reality, right? And being able to stop for a moment and zoom out and look at Ryan and what Ryan's experiencing as if I were somebody else, be able to see the tendencies, like talking about anger, now if and when I do get angry, the first question I ask myself is, what are you afraid of? Because for me, anger is usually fear and drag, so I'll have some type of fear.
Fear and drag?
Yeah, fear and drag, and it shows up as anger. And usually for me these days, it's always, to piggyback on what Greg was saying, it's usually like, high expectations of self, disappointment of self, missing the turn, which is one of my superpowers, right? Because, I'll be on the freeway and I've been driving for an hour and a half and I'm talking to somebody either from recovery or professionally, and I miss my exit, and I'm in the Bay Area, and now my whole day is fucked. Everything's fucked.
Because you missed an exit.
And it's all your fault, and God hates me, and it's just so funny how that's how serious it gets sometimes. Oh my God, and
so an extremist response.
Super extreme. And then usually the next experience I have is laughing. It's like, really, Ryan, really?
Yeah.
Come on, dude. And these are the things that I like sharing with people that I enjoy sharing with people, is really being able to share an uncut, unedited situation, how it made me feel, what were the thoughts associated with this, what was my head telling me, and how I walk through it,
Have you found, sharing that stuff over the years, have you found that other people's responses have changed about you because you became more vulnerable over the years? Like, I've seen that and I've experienced it myself. Like, the people that start to come towards my circle seem to be coming towards my circle more because I've been more vulnerable or humble about my defects and how I work on them. Because I would share about, being angry and making mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see that?
I haven't really looked for it, but I bet you if I look, I'll see it. Attraction rather than promotion, right? I think that.
And you change the people that you attract. Yeah. Like when you were new,
you wanted nothing to do with me.
Yeah, I will talk for myself. When I was new, the only people that came like my way were the people that was still committing crimes, that were still walking the street, all that stuff. And then over the years, I have people like you in my life who are like super authentic and valuable, and they have meaning and they share authentically. And so the people that are attracted to me are different.
The people who were attractive to me in my early recovery displayed examples of vulnerability, and I think we're all hardwired for connection. And many of us, when we're new, hell, many of us with tons of clean time, still struggle with intimate, unadulterated connection, and the only way I really know how to connect is by just cutting out all the bullshit, and sharing the real me. But here's the kicker. I can only share what I see in myself. This is what I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
And sometimes you guys, I get to call and talk to you or Greg or a whole bunch of other people and say, hey, I'm experiencing this thing. Here's the situation. These are the feelings. This is what my head was telling me. And this is how I'm navigating through it, and I have blind spots. I still have blind spots. And this is why,
we all do.
Sponsorship and having a support group and a team of people, because we can't, I don't care if you have a year, 60 days or 20 years, like it's impossible to spot denial, or self-deception, and so I always try to zoom out of self and look at it. And I've gotten really good at it. It's safe. It creates an opportunity for me to be safe by me exposing my belly and sharing all my stuff. It keeps me safe.
Yeah. You ever find yourself when you expose your belly that you feel safer because you've actually cultivated the people around you?
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
There's we were talking a little bit about music before the podcast started, and there was an analogy that I heard someone talking about when they talk about vibrational and frequencies, and something that I experienced being a professional musician playing shows is sometimes you get feedback, right? But what's interesting is if this analogy is talking about is two different guitars on either side of the stage, and someone drops, pick falls off of it and opens the vibrating E tone, that vibration will make the guitar on the other side of the stage vibrate too, because that pulse, in essence, the same note, it won't be a different note. It'll be the same key, the same vibration. Basically that energy, as we grow and evolve, right, and talk about the vulnerability, is like we start to vibrate on different levels. Like the low vibrational bullshit, is no longer where we're operating. And so one of the things that's very interesting, and I've experienced it, is as you were talking about, or what I was relating, is that all of a sudden the things that vibrate on that level start to hum around your circle. It attracts it, It is very different, experiencing my own recovery to go from one space. I remember at one point in my recovery, just as I started working with Ryan, I felt like I had outgrown where I was at, but I wasn't where I wanted to be either. And I had gotten, started a relationship, and Ryan and this girl were operating in the same circle. I remember it was a Christmas like Halloween or a Christmas ornament event or something like that. And I wasn't spending time with the old group, but both my sponsor and my girlfriend were going to this thing. And it's like, I found myself in this weird space of like recovered to isolation, for lack of a better way. I didn't want to be in this space, but I wasn't quite at this. I knew it was happening. You know, it's weird because it was this, do I continue on this path or do I go back to what's comfortable? You know, but I couldn't go back to what was comfortable.
So
because it was
uncomfortable.
Because it was no longer comfortable.
Yeah, you were
in this void.
Outgrown the chaos.
Right.
Yeah.
And
so that's a transitional period for you.
oh, absolutely. And what's crazy for me is it felt like a skip level. If you've ever been in corporate, where you just like, it's not immediately above, but like this next level, and where I was stuck in this in between. But it's like water rises to the same level, you know? And all of a sudden it was like that, it was the assignment, you know, for that particular spot in my recovery is like, do I go back to what I've known, or do I get myself a little bit more uncomfortable and proceed to this place that I feel like I'm going? And I made the decision. I became willing and did the necessary things. And all of a sudden, all these people started sprouting up.
So you walked through fear, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you got to a place where you found a comfortable vibration.
Yeah.
In your circle.
Yep.
I love that. That's like an ultimate goal for me, or something that I keep striving to keep. Like I want to keep that circle that I have, right? Because it's a beautiful vibration. It's pretty high for me right now. The people in my circle, like none of them, I can't think of any one of them that would deliberately go out and cause harm. Mm-hmm. You know, harm might happen,
right?
But it's never deliberate.
Yeah.
And so it's easier to be around that than the old chaos.
Beautiful.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome.
That's one cool thing about Greg and working with Greg is like, even in the beginning,
besides his charm and good looks,
besides his boyish good looks and charming personality, is, many of us, many addicts that are new in recovery, we shy away. You know, fear runs things. And one thing that's always been cool about you is that you've practiced courage, and like all the time. I don't know what this is. This doesn't feel right, and I have no idea what to expect. But here I go, and like as a sponsor, to see someone like it inspires me, you know. And it's like, yep, here we go, man. Like none of us know what the hell we're doing.
And you know, to be honest with you, Ryan, you provided the roadmap for that. You know, like I started experiencing these fears in recovery, right? And you made it okay to be fearful. You said, "Listen, all you need to do, we're doing on the 4-step is being fearless. Like practicing courage is in place of the fear.
Yeah.
So of course you're going to be scared. We're all scared. We all experience these things. Here's the principle. Here's the solution. And it's like, oh, okay. So I just have to do the thing.
I think that's one of the big values of vulnerability is that it helps to foster a sense of true community. Yeah. You know, is what I found. You know, whether it's in sponsorship or in you know, friendship. And like, to me, like the net result of sponsorship is for years has always been like everyone I work with, whether it's my sponsor or sponsees, like we end up developing a really just clear, safe, fun, intimate relationship where we both just get to be humans together.
Give them the euphemism you use about we're all just a bunch of kids going home with it.
We're all just walking each other home, man.
Yep.
We're all just walking each other home.
So my wife's sponsor, she's in St. George, Utah, southern Utah.
Okay.
And she has that painted on a wall in her front living room.
We're just walking each other home?
Yeah.
That's actually Ram Dass.
Oh,
Yeah.
is it?
It is.
Yeah.
It's Ram Dass.
Yeah. So that brings me to the part about fears that we don't want to admit is that fear of you being able to be happy. Like, how do you access and follow the paths that make you happy? Do you ever have a situation where, like, oh, that looks like really like a lot of fun, or I really want to do that, but I have so much fear about either failure or rejection, or especially like pursuing a relationship, an intimate relationship. Like, it feels like that would be a happy situation for you, but you have fear. For example, you and your girl today.
Yeah. Her name's Renee.
Whoa! Just throw her right out there.
Right out
Wow, bro.
Fear of rejection, or fear of failure, or fear of it's going to be the same as it was before.
Those
In
fears,
the pursuit of happiness. Sorry.
yeah, those fears definitely show up, and I think, for me, in my romantic relationship, like, I adore this woman, in a big way. And like, I've never really been a jealous person, and what's interesting is I get to see jealousy show up and insecurity show
Does
up.
it show up for you? Really?
It does, but what's cool is I share these things with her, and I share them with my friends, with my people, and so I think we need to normalize that. I want to normalize that, but
Wait, you want to normalize jealousy?
no, I want to normalize openly sharing what we're
Humility.
experiencing.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because I can't disarm something if I don't bring it out into the light. And so fear of failure, absolutely. Absolutely. What's interesting is this past year and a half, one of the things that's shown up for me. So I changed careers. I went from making a good amount of money and to not making a good amount of money, and a lot of the insecurities that show up for me is like, not being able to do the things for her that I was able to do the year before, and really taking those things for granted too, personally, and equating, my sense of self-worth to how well I take care of her financially. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And like, and we can go down a deep rabbit hole, because I don't know what it's like to be a woman, but I know what it's like to be a man, this man. And like, there's,
Do you recognize that that's toxic?
what's that?
The stigma of you having to live up to this expectation.
Oh, it's absolutely toxic. It's absolutely toxic. And fear proliferates fear. It's like, it's cancerous, right? Cells divide and they proliferate, and, but having this bullshit idea or definition of what masculinity is.
And bullshit is right.
It's total bullshit, right? Because I grew up in a house. What are you crying for? And
I'll give you something to cry about.
and like, and it's like, we're programmed, to be this certain way. And the model that I had, now that I'm clean and I look back, and my dad's been dead for many years, but I get to see like, oh, he was just a scared little boy too. And that's why these things manifested. And this is why he behaved the ways he did, You
ever find out how he grew up?
Yes, I did. And
Does that give you a little bit of compassion for him?
It does. It really does. Yes, it absolutely does.
Same. I went through the same thing with my dad.
Yeah.
He's still around, and I just like his journey as a child was horrific, and passed it on.
Yep, that's what we do.
Yeah.
What about you? The fear of pursuing happiness.
Yeah,
is there something that you relate to?
Yeah, when you talked about that, it reminded me of the one of the. So I was working with Ryan for maybe 4 or 5 months. I was still in the quote unquote newness of recovery. I was approaching 18 months, and I I did the whole no relationships for a year. You know, we had been working through a process of I'm ready to start exploring this. Let's do a list. Like, how can you show up to the same level of what you're expecting and
good.
and all
I
these
love that
things.
list.
Yeah. So I kind of landed in this weird place of like I might just be single for a while, you know, and a romantic interest showed up. But at least from the short tenure I'd had with the rooms,
Wait, I'm sorry. When you say short tenure that you had in the rooms, what are you talking about?
Tenure.
like
tenure.
being just not my length of time being within.
It
the
really
rooms.
sounds like you're making that insignificant.
Oh well,
18 months?
I was approaching 18 months. Yeah, 16 months, something like that.
So yeah, I mean, let's be realistic about it. I know what your thought process is.
Yeah.
I get it. But just for listeners,
Okay, gotcha.
18 months
Big fucking deal.
is fucking long time.
Well, yes.
So yeah,
I-
let's not
I-
put that down.
I appreciate you calling that to light. Yes.
Okay.
So that was my interpretation. of it at
exactly.
the
I
time.
know
You
what you're
fucked
talking
around.
about.
You fucked around and you found out.
And I found out. So this particular interest of mine, like I was under an understanding she had been dating someone for 10 years. I didn't know that they were apart because I had seen, ran into him at a concert. And I found out, shortly thereafter that they had been broken up for some time. And I had been, coincidentally, starting to establish a relationship with him. He was he was sharing at group level some of the experiences I had in early recovery.
Nice.
And so I felt like I had something to offer in this space. And so I was talking to him, I've been through this. That's how I spent the first, year of so I know what it's like to be going through these things, and I called Ryan. I'm like, I don't know what's happening because I think there might be something in this situation with this girl, which was his ex. And I'm like, but what's the implication of this, dude? Like,
What do you mean by implication?
like I'm now offering myself as support for he's going through some challenges in this space. I've been there and I'm developing a relationship and having these conversations. All the while I'm a secretary at a meeting. I heard her share and I'm like wanted to bring her in to speak. And as we're kind of talking, it's like, wait, is this flirting? Like this is this person's ex. And I'm talking with him as far as the situation. And so I talked to Ryan, I'm like, I don't know what to do, And he's like, I'm like, I don't want to jeopardize what I've got in the rooms. And he's like, so what's the play here? I'm like, I'm just going to leave that right where it fucking is. And he's like, oh, isn't that cute? His feelings are more important than yours.
Boom.
And I'm like,
Right.
well,
I get it. So that's that
yeah.
like fear of making yourself happy.
Right. And
Or
he's
pursuing
like,
happiness.
listen, if she's in a space where she is open to this possibility, even if he is not, you've showed up in this space over here because these are removed items. If this is your happiness.
Yeah.
So do you chase happiness or do you surrender your feelings for what someone else is probably going to experience when that happens anyways? And it was like, I had to get real current because then I told him, I'm like, I don't feel right with this. I don't want him to find this out by any other means than me sharing it. And so we had to work very diligently about like, when's that time? Because you haven't even gone to get coffee. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so it was like, I'm at this constant checkpoint of like, is it? And, but I remember I decided to choose happiness and pursue that. And we, I remember, as it got to a point where it's like, okay, this has become something. Like the next thing I had to do was make that phone call and share with that person because I felt like that was the most principled thing.
So you walked through that fear. That's a good one.
Fuck, man. That was really hard.
It
Yeah.
was. It
and that
wasn't
was-
easy for you.
I mean, that was a moment.
Because we don't want to cause harm, right? So I remember him being in the spot where he's like, hey, I think this romantic interest is developing over here, but her previous partner of 10 years is this other dude who I also really like, and we're becoming friends, and I don't know how the hell to do this.
Yeah.
You know, and like,
And fear of what everyone's going to think. You know what I mean?
Oh, image management.
Yeah. Valid fears.
Yeah. But it was a really pivotal moment for my recovery. I'm like coming to tears about it because I remember like having that. I remember I told her, listen, here's a situation. And I want you to know that this may get to a point before we even pursue any of this that I need to have a conversation with this person. And, you know, like she found that to be very attractive because it was application of program.
Yeah.
And I remember having that call and, you know, it's really interesting because I feel like in that, you know, kind of zooming out from that whole thing, each one of these three people were acting in a principled space. And
Three people, you, her, and him?
Yeah.
Okay.
In our own life experiences, on our own timelines of events. And it's interesting how when I think about that situation is like God showed up for all of us exactly how it was supposed to, you know, because when I had that call, it was really heavy for me because it's like I felt like I could feel that person's heartbreak a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I got off the phone and I cried and I talked and he's like, that's compassion and that's empathy. I'm like, this fucking sucks, dude. And you know, he told me later that was a really difficult situation, but that's probably the best way I could have wanted that to happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Were you calling to ask permission or just inform him?
Inform.
Because you're going to do what you're going to do.
Right. And I didn't want it to find out from any other source, you know, because the implication that, you know, maybe I'm talking to you through this and then all the while, you know what I mean?
No, I do.
And so I you know, we have a situation and I shared it. And
it sounds dramatic.
Oh, it was a lot, dude.
A lot of drama.
Well, I don't feel like it was a lot of drama. It was a lot of the moments when, like, if you've worked the 12 steps of recovery with a sponsor and you've been as willing as you can be to the best of your ability, I think we all have these moments where you're on a cliff and on either side of the cliff, it's like I jump off this side and there's rocks at the bottom. I know it's there. So there's this other side of the cliff where I don't get to see the bottom. And I got to just fucking jump. And realizing like when you're standing there looking off into the emptiness of I don't know, and you jump for your program and the principles, it's those moments, you know, like it was. So when you say drama, there is a drama to that. I don't feel like it was drama.
So it doesn't.
The drama's in your head.
Yeah, no, it
that's
doesn't
the
sound like you were
unmanageability.
creating drama then.
No, right.
Okay, good.
But it was a lot.
All right.
It was a lot. It was active recovery in real living color. You know?
I like it. I like it. That's a good example of walking through the fear to pursue happiness.
Yeah.
I appreciate that story.
Yeah.
So we covered fears. And so we're going to take a break. It's break time. And when we come back, we're going to cover resentments.
Oh, yeah. My favorite.
Are you excited about
dude,
that?
Yeah.
All right, be right back.
A foot.
And we're back. So nice break. Thanks.
That was a great break.
We made it.
So we covered a bunch of stuff, and now we're on to resentments.
All right.
Da-na-na. The fun part.
How do you feel about resentments?
I
They're
felt
your favorite?
I felt great about them right off the rip. I'm like, yeah,
I hate
this is yeah. I tell you all the things. You know, after going through it, it's like it's the setup. The ultimate setup is when you're talking about working through the flat book. It's like, let's start this section off with all the resentments. You're like, yes. And then now we're going to talk about your part. It's like, wait, what? It's the old rope-a-dope, right? And I had resentments. I mean, I wrote a lot about resentments. You know, I get the first round was a lot. You know, the second time it's like, wow, it's really, you kind of see how things have changed because you start to recognize like, oh yeah, I have a part in this, you know?
change of perception.
Absolutely.
So name one big resentment when you were a newcomer. Or right before you got.
This was a huge one for me then, and it still rears its ugly head at me is self-righteousness. So like I feel like the things need to be justified. Like when this isn't fair. What
were you resentful at or about? Person, place, or things?
Yeah, I guess all of it,
What wasn't fair? Give us an
Greg.
example.
Greg, what wasn't fair?
Okay. The California court systems were unfair.
Oh.
Me going through my divorce, and experiencing the abuse that I experienced in that relationship, the constant pursuit for trying to find equal ground and always being the one working and not getting anything reciprocated. And then when you finally reach your tipping point, just getting gouged through the court system because someone may know how to manipulate and play the.
Sounds like you had an expectations that things would be fair.
Yep.
Yeah. And then reality hit and life showed up and things aren't fair.
Yep. And what's crazy is, my girl today would be like, don't say that shit in public, but I'm going to say it. There was times where it was bad that I'm like, I was in such a self-righteousness that I'm like, I'm going to shoot these fucking courts up because this is unbelievable.
He didn't, just
I did not.
So our audience.
Yeah. But it was crazy, the fact that we'd go through these situations and she crying and all this stuff that was just bullshit. And then the judges would be like, oh, yes, my gosh, I'm sorry, here's what we're going to do for you. Mm-hmm. And it's like, are you serious?
Yeah.
And then my response to this would be like, sir, you need to calm down. It's like, wow. This is, but I had no control over my, my situation through that time. I was, using but I carried a lot of that through, And
you say it still rears its ugly head?
Self-righteousness. Yeah. I feel like, so there are things, I can think of, for example, I was working through, anger, fear, anger, entitlement, sadness, for whatever reason, anger management had shown up and I'm like, okay, I guess that's the thing I'm going to pursue, I learned a lot of things in that process. And then where the self-righteousness would come in is I remember there was a holiday where he, 50-50 custody, like she's supposed to have him this, I have him for Christmas. But the way that our custody schedule works out is she has him the 4 days leading up to it. It's like, even when I get him for Christmas, I still get fucked. It always works out for her, And that's type shit. It's like, I don't understand how even in something that's supposed to be even, and that I had to uncover this anger was actually sadness because, I was going to be missing out on the lead up.
So how long does it take you to get from that resentment to reality? Okay.
So the process has shortened for sure. Because once you learn the process, you experience the feeling, it's like, oh, this is resentment. And then where is this resentment coming from? Oh, it's coming from this. But when I didn't have that framework, I had resentments that lasted years that were still pent up. And I could have what I thought was worked through it. And then something would come up and we're right back where I left off many months ago where I had worked through all of that because I hadn't actually had the quote unquote mini 4-step concept of how to work through, identify, and find my part and why it's so hard to separate from. And
what was your part in that situation with the custody?
Well, in that particular situation, like I was, this is the groundwork for my part was like the self-righteousness is that I was feeling like,
you were owed
that it was, everything worked out for her and it was unfair.
I think it's expectation because let's face it, you had 47% custody and she had 53, and that is not 50-50, and this shit isn't fair.
It's unjust. Yeah.
yeah, and then some dads, they get like supervised visitation.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
the
experienced that
perception
too.
in your own mind, regardless of what's outside, that's all consuming.
Right.
Yeah. What about you and your resentments?
Oh, my resentments were my superpower. What was the question specifically? we can really
I have a
unpack
question
this.
for you.
Play in
Do
the
you
mud.
attach resentment? I mean, was there like a false sense of hate when you think about resentments that you came into the rooms with?
Yeah.
For an example, for me, Eazy-E said it best when he said, "Fuck the police."
Oh.
So that was me coming into the rooms. Something like that. Does that, or something similar?
Yeah, I think for me, I was a professional victim, and everything was always, daddy's fault, or my girlfriend's fault, or this boss's fault, or my parole officer's fault, and if all of you fuckers would just get your shit together, everything would be great. Like, why don't you guys just get it together,
That was the resentment?
No, I'm getting there. I'm leading up to it. So the most glaring example of resentment is with my father. And what's interesting is that my father's been dead for a number of years. Mm-hmm. And I toggle in between this place of compassion and forgiveness when certain emotional, when certain emotions, old emotions are activated, there's still this little boy inside me that's just very much, why? Why did you do that? How could you have, and here I am at damn near 50 years old, and sometimes I still feel like this hurt little boy, and if I do not maintain a healthy perspective in reality, then I can go right back down the victim rabbit hole, and it's like connect the dots, man. It's like connect the dots.
I can relate to that father thing. That's why I asked you earlier, like your compassion for your dad now, because you found out how he was raised.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had a lot of resentment against my dad and stepmom, and they grew up in horrible circumstances. Yeah. And so I
hurt people, right?
Yeah. But I mean, they didn't have any great teachers. Yeah. They didn't have a program.
Can I ask you guys a question on this topic?
Yeah.
Yeah. Always.
So is your dad still here?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things I was talking with Ryan about is I would process through something. I've had shit with my dad too. And it's like I would my ex-wife started connecting. I make this joke that I lost my dad in the divorce, because they ended up maintaining a relationship. I no longer have a relationship with him. I have whatever minimal relationship for custody stuff with my ex-wife. And I would process through stuff and get past it, right? Expectations, what their upbringing is. And then my son would be over like, oh, I went to grandpa's. And it's like, God, that shit just still continues, and it's like, the way I was explaining it to him is like, I thought I was through all that. And then it's like, here's more hurt. It's like, he just keep bringing the hurt, bro. You know, and it's like, I feel like I got to work through this every damn holiday that they spend together. Cause it's like, how many times can I tell it that he just doesn't, and you know, it all comes back to the expectations and stuff, but what's challenging for me is how sometimes it will still come up is even though I can, what I believe, work through something, I have to remind myself and go back to that place. And I don't want to do that right away. It's almost like I want to be like, what a fucking coward, you know? And like it's interesting how
it is interesting because he'll ask you, what's your part? And I will tell you that you're taking it personal, right? You believe your dad is out to get you?
No, it's not that. It becomes like what he was talking about is where that little boy is like, it feels unfair. It's hard for me if I can't, this is where acceptance was such a powerful thing. It's like, it's acknowledgement. It's not approval, is because I can recognize the situation and think I'm in acceptance, but it's not okay.
Yeah.
And I would be stuck in the chaos of I need to approve of it. And I don't. There's my self-righteousness, right?
Yeah. That's why I say step back and look at the big picture.
Yeah.
Your dad's not out to get you.
Yeah.
Right.
And you were talking about that.
You know, what's interesting is just yesterday, what's been going on for several months now. So most of my children are grown. And, and I've really gone out of my way. Since I became a father, my goal was to level up and to be nothing like my dad, right? Mm-hmm. And, for the past several months, so I have 3 daughters and 1 son. And I have a bonus daughter as well with me and Renee's relationship. Mm-hmm. My oldest is 27, and my son is going to be 23, and him and I haven't been talking for a while. And it's been interesting because, he's let me know, he's in therapy. He's trying to figure some stuff out. And at the end of the day, he's processing his wounds and his hurts from some of my behavior pre-recovery, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's 2 sides of this, because there's one part of me that's self-centered and it's like, but bro, I'm not that person anymore. Give me some credit. Just fucking move on.
I'm a hero with a cape.
Right? Yeah. And then here's still this 50-year-old man that still has these hurt little boy feelings about my own father. And it's like, so being able to zoom out on all that and really just, so we got to have like an hour and a half conversation yesterday. And what happened was, so I think of him all the time. And yesterday I was thinking of him and I was missing him. But then the next thought was, man, what would you have wanted from your dad? And at the end of the day, what is it that I wanted, or still want today? And that's just to have my dad give a shit and show that he gives a shit, right, and reach out to me.
Did you ever seek approval? Was that
from my father or from my son?
From your father.
Absolutely.
And do you expect that from your kid too?
I think, do I seek approval? I think part of me does, if I'm being brutally honest. I want to be the hero. Mm-hmm. I want to have that cape. And, we're like biologically engineered, I believe, to seek approval from our parental figures, from our moms and our dads, and that's why it was really confusing for me as a child. Like, this is my hero, right? And my hero like beats me in a really extreme fashion, and I couldn't imagine ever doing that. So it's interesting, looking at doing the comparative analysis. Like my children are mad because of the ways that I behaved, but at least I wasn't as bad as my dad was, right? And then it's sort of like when we're, before I got clean, it's like, hey, at least I'm not doing that certain drug and with that certain method of administration, so I'm okay. So it's the whole rationalization and justification, but getting clear on, how did it affect? How did my behavior, what kind of impact emotionally and mentally did it have on my children, right? So the 4th step, it gives us an opportunity to get a really healthy perspective. It gives me an opportunity to get a healthy perspective. What is my part? My intentions don't mean shit. You know, what do they say? The road to heaven was paved or the road to hell was paved in good intentions, you know? It's my behavior and the way that those behaviors affect people that matters, you know? So,
Yeah.
you know, I got to have a really good conversation with him yesterday, and it was beautiful. It was horrible. It was wonderful. It was terrible. Like all this stuff, you know? Fear of failure. Like that's one of my biggest things is failing as a father. You know, and you know, because my head wants to tell me what a failure my dad was. But then when I zoom out far enough, was he really? You know, because I choose to believe that my higher power laid everything out for me to get to where I am now. And like, who am I to judge the journey? You know, would I have the level of compassion and empathy and patience and all that good stuff that I have today had I not had the experience that I have, right? And so being able just to sit back and connect with my son and let him know, hey, we don't have to talk about any of this messy stuff now. I just want you to know that when the time comes, I promise to be safe. I promise to be open. I promise that I will listen. I promise if I have to put my hand over my mouth, I will do that. I won't be defensive, you know, because your experience matters. And I want you to know that I'm a safe place for you to bounce these things off of. And, you know, and sometimes it's okay for me to just listen and say, thank you for sharing, you know, but my ego wants to be like, but that's not right. That's not right. I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah. So in your head, you have a lot of a different perception. 'Cause like, gaslighting is so common.
Yeah.
In our.
We were talking about that on the drive up here.
Oh yeah. So yeah, in our relationships that are still toxic is like, because I have experienced that to a degree that sometimes it makes me doubt what I remember as reality in my childhood. Yeah. Right. That never happened. Yeah, but I remember specifically getting hit in the face with one of those giant batteries.
Yeah.
Right. That happened to me. Yeah.
Mine was a Rubik's Cube.
Oh, well, that's a good one.
Kindergarten. Sure. I remember.
Figure that one out.
Yeah. Figured that one out.
You're clever. Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like the gaslighting created a lot of, I don't want to say second guessing, but it created a lot. For me, it created resentment.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean it didn't happen?
Yeah.
What do you mean you never acted like that? What, you motherfucker?
Yeah. Yeah.
And today the gaslighting, I'm just speaking for myself. Today, the gaslighting is me acknowledging that somebody else has a character defect. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean by I'm not taking on somebody else's character defect. Gotcha. Like they can say that all they want. I know my truth. And I can accept that they don't live on the same vibration, just like you said. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So here's a good spiritual principle for us to talk about, because mostly it's been all kind of a downer and hate and resentment and fears and
bring in the love.
Gratitude.
Yeah.
So how are we showing our gratitude today?
You know, it's interesting. You know, so I hear things in the room that, you know, gratitude is an action word, and it is, right? And to me, gratitude is my outward display, my behavior, my actions, but my outward display. So, you know, gratitude is my display of having a grateful heart, right? But some days Ryan doesn't feel like his heart is very grateful, you know, and that's just my truth, you know. I could tell you that when I keep my gratitude higher than my expectations, my days are pretty good. And I don't know where, I didn't make that up. I got that from somebody and I went, that's brilliant. I'm going to use that.
I like it.
You know, and actually practice that in my life. So some days when I wake up and like I just recently changed jobs, and for the past few months, I'd wake up in the morning, and it's like it's Groundhog Day in Buxatawney again. You know, it was sort of like that,
say we're
man.
young.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and being able to look back, get into reality, right? Like once upon a time, Ryan couldn't find a job. Once upon a time, Ryan couldn't quit putting in. You know, once upon a time, Ryan was, you know, in the mental facility in Sacramento. And once upon a time, Ryan, after he got clean, like was still pretty much homeless, and people were letting me sleep on their couch. And then I did get a job, but I didn't have a car. So I was taking the bus, you know, and like getting a really clear perspective. And the truth is all of the things that I wanted years ago, I have all those. I have all those today, you know, not living in distortions, you know, having the opportunity to step back.
You're saying you're grateful for that?
I'm absolutely grateful to have a healthy perspective on my life, you know, and a lot of times it's when I focus on the activities instead of the outcome, because I want some things and things need to look a certain way, right? And I can get caught up in that.
Yeah. Let me ask you, when you're working with Greg, do you ever find yourself wanting to get Greg to recognize or go in the direction of gratitude? When it gets selfish and personal, and I'm not asking for you to give dirt, but do you?
It sounded like you kind of wanted me to give dirt, doesn't it?
All right, give some dirt. I don't care.
Greg's always done a really good job of coming to the answer, you know, all on his own, you know. So like my job is to ask questions.
Yeah.
You know, what would it look like if we, you know, we brought some surrender and acceptance into this situation? Let's and paint a picture. You know, what would it look like if we were to practice humility in this situation? These are just the things that my sponsor has done for me. You know.
So what about how do you interact with gratitude between the two of you? Or you ever ask him to do a gratitude list or anything?
I want to say yes, but I honestly don't know. I usually do. You know.
Yeah. No. We. You know, I feel like we worked a lot on curiosity and humor.
Yeah. What is that?
What is it?
I'll ask those things.
Yeah,
you know,
so
he'll share a story. That's interesting. These are probably words that my guys hate hearing from me. That's interesting. What is that? Let's unpack this a little bit more.
Right.
You
So
know?
how do you get to gratitude if you're not prompted from Ryan?
Well, so I remember there being a point in early recovery for me that I had recognized that anytime I was faced with something that was very challenging, where points of chaos, if you will, when I walked through it, there was a really amazing gift. And so, you know, I really identified with that. Some of the best gifts come in the worst wrapping paper, or the ugliest wrapping paper that our literature talks about. And, you know, it made me, I remember there was a point where I'm like, all right, God, like, fuck me up. Like, give me like discomfort, pain, and suffering. Cause I got you and I got support. So like, if the gift is proportionate to the discomfort, pain, or suffering is what I had been experiencing. Like this switch flipped for me. And I remember I was inviting, just because if whatever I was faced with, if I could walk through it, principally, I would be given equally as powerful of a gift. And
That's a great perception.
It made me think about taking my son in for shots when he was a baby. It made me think of the situation that I would take him in there and I knew what was happening. He didn't know what was happening. But then he would get the prick from the needle and he would cry and he'd look at me like, what have you done? And I was able to use that as a metaphor that's like, oh my God, like he doesn't understand that, yes, there's going to be some pain or some discomfort, but this is for you.
Now you're not going to get malaria.
Right. And his little mind just doesn't know. He just knows what the immediate experience is. And so I thought, well, fuck, maybe God is the father, right? And I'm the baby, right? Maybe this experience is the pinprick. Like, this is not a challenge. This is an opportunity for me to grow.
I like that.
Conceptually, spiritually. Yeah. And so, there are times where my emotions and my experience can be so big that I can lose sight or be divorced from that process. But I really try to operate in, this is not a challenge. This is not happening to me. It's happening for me. And just that transformative vocabulary is it allows me to look for the open door instead of seeing what's closed in front of me. So
let me ask you, does that make you feel grateful that you are willing to walk through that pain and fear? And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll give you an example that just happened. I went out to my garage to grab some tools, like maybe a week ago, and my water heater is busted in my house. It's leaking, it's flooded all over my garage. Like, there's stuff that's been damaged that I don't even know yet, and this is an expense, let alone I have a job to do today that I'm having to call and shut down. And I feel like in many situations, most of us would experience that and be like, this is horrible.
Yes.
I was overwhelmed with gratitude. And the reason is because I have been provided a lifestyle that allows me to be able to say hey to my client. Like, I'm the boss. I run businesses now. Like, I have an emergency. I can't tend to this. I had an opportunity where my foreman came to the job to load up to go to this thing, and I have help there immediately. I have a job that has provided me the financial stability to be able to say, here's a problem with my home that I can just put some money into and a little bit of effort. And there were so many things that revealed themselves as gifts to my life today. It was like amazing that I could share that with somebody and be like, how freaking cool is it? Like, I'm filled with this pride that I have the ability to do this. And, what's this in the general scheme of things?
Pride
of a home ownership, of being able to.
So grateful that you have that.
So grateful.
Yeah.
And I feel like on the surface, like, that's ugly wrapping paper. But I was able to experience this, not like post haste, but in the moment.
I know, that's great.
That I'm like, this is so great. And the stuff that's damaged, I probably don't need that shit anyways. There's a reason this is happening for me, not to me, Like, you've seen those little crystals that, so my girl has one of these crystals that hangs from her window, and depending on where the sun is at, the light refracts on a different wall. I use this as an analogy, as like God or a higher power is always working on our life. And if you're holding the prism and you're able to walk around it and explore it with curiosity, right? The initial thing that catches your eye, if you look at it from a different point of view, will refract and spotlight something that you didn't see otherwise. And so you allow yourself the opportunity to explore what this is with the perception of this is not happening to me, but it's happening for me. Like, it shines light on things if you're willing to look at it that way, on something that you otherwise would have seen as.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. You?
I don't know. Did I even answer your last question? Like, how do I help Greg, or how do I help Sponsees? And we're looking at gratitude. I don't point to the thing. I will ask questions, that require reflection.
So are you trying to like drag that out to the front? Gratitude? I'm only asking because I've had sponsors, like, that's a specific thing they do. Like, if I'm expressing some pain and suffering that I'm going through, they will work in some spiritual principles where I have to step back out of that picture and go big picture and then go, oh, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. And for me, like, it doesn't happen. It's as a sponsor or as a friend in recovery, it's not my job to, one thing I don't respond well to is somebody saying, well, it sounds to me like you need to get in gratitude. The first thing that goes on in Ryan's head is, well, the first thing you need to do is fuck off.
What are you blessed and grateful for?
But when I had people say things like, wow, hey, do you remember what it was like before you got here? Yeah, I do remember what it was like when I first got here. Do you remember how much you suffered, during this situation? Do you remember how scared you were here? And where are you today? Does it look different? Does it feel different? I will just like, so our step working guide is a really brilliant example of this, how it asks us redundantly certain questions. Yeah. Right. So I'll do, what are you laughing at? So I'll do things like that. I'll point them in the direction of the thing, cause I think it's our job individually to come to, my life is different today. Oh, my perspective is different today. Like, how many conversations have we had for both of us? We're like, wow, I feel a whole lot better than I did just 10 minutes ago.
So we talked about earlier when I was calling you and you're like, oh, you want me to listen or do you want me to?
Yeah. What hat do you want me to wear?
Yeah.
Am I your friend or am I your sponsor?
He pointed me to, and help me because I'll forget the name of it. But the IP for the 10 step, like the questions. Right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I encourage you to do, a mini 10 step and, read the questions and pick out some that are going to be, beneficial. I'm like, fuck, I just wanted to listen, not some stupid assignment. And there was a question in there that was the most important thing I did staying clean today. And I thought to myself, wow, I didn't even think about staying clean today. But I remember how it was when I had to. And I'm bitching about not having time because I'm running multiple businesses. Yeah. And I have a girl.
You poor son of a bitch, you.
Baseball practice and day. I'm like, holy shit, dude. So it's interesting because that's how this thing works sometimes is.
That analogy, like I'm a photographer. And so if I have like a zoom lens on my camera and I'm pulled in really, really tight on something and I only see that. Right? Yeah. What I have in my lens. And I use this a lot in my life, in my recovery, is the minute I zoom out, I see so much more. Yeah. And that little thing that I'm looking at is a speck on that huge frame in my camera.
There was an addict that shared with me one time. He said, it's really hard to see the picture when you're the one in it. Mm-hmm. And, looking at this, picture you have here with the sunset and the sailboat. It's like, if you were on that sailboat, it might be cool and pretty, but then the zoom out, is, whoa, wow. You're taking, I
never imagined that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to do that with the guys that I sponsor or the people that I sponsor, is to do a lot of zooming out, big picture stuff. Mm-hmm. Because when they're in that tiny little frame, it can stay stuck. And a lot of times I'll just say, what if you do nothing?
Yeah. And sometimes that's the most spiritual thing I can do.
Yeah. Yeah. What if you do nothing?
Ryan likes to bring up we're messy little humans.
Oh, I like that.
And it's funny because it made me think of, I remember one time I was out in front of my porch and he's like, messy little humans. And I was like, wow, that really allows you to zoom out. Like, it made me think of a video game where you build your own character and you make it look like you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I make this guy look like me and I'm making him till the ground with a spoon. Like, me playing the game is funny. Like, this is the insanity of that. But if I was that guy trying to fucking do this shit with a spoon, I'd be in all types of chaos. But the zoom out is look at this dude, he's trying to do it with a spoon.
That's great.
Messy little humans. It's maybe think of it's a little avatar down there. You know what I mean?
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you guys got anything else about recovery? Gratitude in recovery? You said it was, this came up on the last episode. You said it's action word, and I have two perceptions on gratitude. One's an action, right? This is I do this because I'm grateful for this.
Yeah.
That what I have or who's in my life. I'm grateful for all that. And then there's like for me, there's a non-action part of gratitude is like, I use the example when my sponsor passed away, I was in such pain and my life was crumbling around me. This is the extent of my emotional feelings. Like I would spend time on the floor and, curled up in a ball, crying my eyes out, just sobbing. And then the people in my circle would show up and they would be there for me and they would console me and comfort me and help me through the process. The only way I could show my gratitude there is to tell them. Because I was in that space where I couldn't do any action.
Right.
Except, feel those horrific feelings. And so that type of gratitude is just letting you know, Ryan, and Greg, that I am very, very grateful that you're in my life.
Yeah.
And that's the best I could do at the time.
And sometimes the best display of gratitude doesn't require words.
Right.
Like there's so much value in the hugs that we get to share.
Right.
And for the people who add to my life, when I hug those people, I make it a little weird. You guys have both experienced this with me. I'm going to hold on a little bit longer, and I'll go out of my way to like, oh, wait, nope, this way. So we're heart to heart, just breathing together. It's like,
just so we make that hug clear, you go in on the left.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Never
always.
go in on the right.
That's just awkward.
No.
Don't be
Left
that
to
guy.
left to left, heart to heart,
Yeah. I'm not saying that's the law or the rules,
Should be.
but it's so like 20 years ago, I was at a meeting. I'm walking up I'm entering the building and I'm walking up the steps and my friend is at the top of the steps and I go to hug him and I'm going left, but he went right.
What, you trying to kiss me, bro?
And we kissed. And it was unintentional. And I was like,
gum.
that was really awkward for me.
Yeah. Was it good for you?
Give me my gum back.
Not that, not that I'd kiss friends. But the whole hug thing needs to be very clear for me because that OCD.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going on. And I've told people like, no, that's not how you hug. And then I have to catch myself like, well, you can hug me any way you want, but I'll deal with my own feelings.
I agree with you though, that what am I grateful for and how am I expressing, what's my outward expression of being grateful for that thing? So like, I'm grateful to be clean, especially because it took me a lot to get clean and I'm really grateful to be clean. So how do I express my gratitude? I go to meetings. I have a sponsor. He knows he's my sponsor. He can't avoid it. I work with others. I'm of service. I work my assignments and I make sure that on a regular basis, every single day, I'm reaching out to an addict. And it's like it's like a wheel of fortune. Like pick an addict, and just somebody comes to mind. It's like, I'm going to call this person. And sometimes they pick up and it's great. It's like, I don't have any reason to, what's going on? You okay? Like, yeah, shit don't have to be on fire for me to reach out to people. Right. I really like connecting with you, I'm grateful for my romantic relationship, and, I'm grateful for the traditions, like our common welfare should come first. My relationship depends on our unity, right? And as an addict, self-centeredness is at the core of the disease, and I love having shit my way. So as an example, I don't care if there's dishes in the sink. I don't care. But my partner does, and we butt heads on this thing. And if I'm looking at this from the framework of my way, having things my way, like this is unimportant to me, right? But it is something that is important to her. So being able to get out of self, like, it doesn't matter that I think this is a silly thing. I'm not even going to let her know. Well, I guess she knows now that it's a silly thing to me. It's important to her, and we are important to me. So I'm going to do things that are important to her.
Out of consideration for her feelings?
And for
because you
common
care?
welfare.
And for unity. Yeah, our common welfare.
I hear that.
You know?
But is it those little... Okay, so I could see part of that, like dishes in the sink or to me, that would be like a small thing.
It is. Yeah.
Does that prompt you to do it out of... well, I wouldn't say guilt or shame or expectation.
Obligation, you know,
or respect for her.
So here's funny. I can perform the same actions, right? And depending on my spiritual condition at the time,
perfect.
I can do these things. So if my spiritual fitness is on point, and my self-awareness is on point, and I am living in gratitude and experiencing joy, like one of the questions in that. Living the program, IP 9 is was I happy? And I think that's interesting because sometimes I'm not, right? But I can perform the same actions, getting the dishes done and wiping the counters and making sure and lighting the incense and fluffing the pillows on the couch if I get home first, you know. If my spiritual fitness is on point and I am in a place of gratitude and I am grateful for being in a relationship with this magnificent human, I get so much joy and fulfillment just to be a servant in that relationship.
Need of service, yeah.
Right? Let's flip that, because I can perform the same actions and be like, fuck, this is so stupid. I have to do this, you know? You know, and it's like, doing it from a sense of obligation. You know, if I don't do this, she's not going to be happy.
That obligation is attached to like guilt?
Perhaps, you know, But I just think that it's interesting because it's all the same stuff.
Yeah.
And it's my perspective, you know, and having a healthy perspective, and being focused on us. And like, I love her. I want her to get home. If I get home first, I want her after the day she's had to walk in and just be able to go, you know.
That specific thing, Ryan, I would tell you that that's the difference between the 2-foot drop. In your head,
it is.
Yeah, in your head is the resentment and expectations and all that negative stuff.
Yep.
And then your other side is when you do the 2-foot drop in your heart, you're feeling that love.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, you initially started this portion with like any final things on gratitude.
Yeah.
And as you were, you know, I'm glad that you brought that up, Ryan, about the same actions with different intentions or mindset. Is like, I found that on the most granular level, and we've talked about this a lot, what we focus on expands, right? So, you know, there are times where I fall out of gratitude, you know, but that perception you're talking about, like, sometimes it's forced application of 1, 2, 3 things of gratitude, but it's hard to find that first one. Hard, you know, not as difficult to find the second, but by the time I'm at 3, all of a sudden I have 7 to 10 because it's, you know, okay, now I'm thinking about that, you know, as you're sharing same actions, different intention, it feels lighter when you're in the space. And when to kind of like illustrate the what we focus on expands is you started getting into fluffing pillows and lighting candles. And it's like, all of a sudden it kind of like the domino effect happens because you've initiated, gratitude is absolutely something that we can practice in a place of chaos, because if we remove ourselves from the chaos to a forced application of gratitude, even in our thoughts in the most granular space, if you give yourself the opportunity of putting a few of those pieces together, then the puzzle reveals itself and it's like, oh, now I'm in this flow.
And I think it attributes to me to self-esteem as well. And you mentioned it earlier. It's either I get to or I have to.
Right.
You know, and those are the two the two different spots, of my spiritual fitness, right? I have to do these things. That's me being self-centered. That's me being stuck in ego. That's me wanting to have my way. That's me living from the neck up and being stuck in my head, or I get to, because my partner and I, we have been, we did the whole hokey pokey. We're in, we're out. We broke up a number of times, and when I, for me to experience gratitude for my relationship, I can easily remember and tap into the times I know what it's like to miss her. I know what it's like to just want to hug her and want to hold her, and pet her, and we make fun of that. She's like, you pet me. And I'm like, I know, that's what I do, missing those things and experience the longing, and I don't have to miss her anymore. But I could fuck around and find out, right? I can neglect her. I can be self-centered. I can do all these things. And she's a woman of recovery. She's not going to deal with that shit. Yeah. So I get to today. I get to make her coffee and bring it to her while she's still in bed. I get to do these things. And a lot of times these little things, we had to have a conversation yesterday. And I shared my conversation that I had with my son, and we get to have these heart-to-hearts, and talk about our day and
so just, you're grateful for that.
Yeah, I really am.
That's really cool. So what about assets, our favorite topic?
Yeah.
Talking about ourselves and how great we are.
So it sounds like humility. What we're really talking about is humility. Right?
No, a lot of times when we do an episode and it's always towards the end is assets. As soon as I say, let's talk about assets, people groan. Because, I hate that. And I relate to hating talking about my assets. It's lessened a tremendous amount because in early recovery, I was so ego-driven that I had so many assets and very little character defects. And then...
You?
And then reality hits, right? After 5-10 years.
Yeah.
And you change that perspective and now it's very... You said it, very humbling to talk about our assets. Yeah. So before you start listing off how great you are, I will tell you one of your very best assets that you and I share is the fact that you can have empathy and connect heart to heart. Because I felt that from you, throughout our relationship, is that you can connect with me and understand what I'm going through. And I appreciate that. And that's part of your assets.
I like it better when other people talk about my assets. So why don't you guys keep it going?
Blow smoke up your ass?
It's interesting that this is something that's uncomfortable or difficult for many addicts to talk about, right? But it's also vitally important that we get clear on what our assets really are. Yep. And I think when we work steps too, there's so much focus on us, and
that's kind of the point.
It is the point, right? But we can get lost in that. Is my point? We can get lost in our stuff. You're
talking about the negative stuff?
Yeah, we can get lost in the negative stuff, right? And it can be overwhelming, So if I were to look at my assets, I would have to say, and here I have to look at myself as I'm not myself. If that makes sense,
Zoom out.
Exactly. I have to zoom out. It makes it easier. Ryan cares. Ryan really cares about the well-being of others. Ryan wants to connect. Ryan really does want to connect on an emotional level with other people. Ryan wants to create a space of fun, of openness, of safety. And safety is the word that I didn't feel safe for much of my life, right? And I never felt safe to be vulnerable, especially with another man, and just for people to know that I care, And I want people to know that they are absolutely, it is not only okay, it can be fun to share our mess. It is okay for you to not know what the hell you're doing, because most days I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. This is why I have a sponsor.
You're funny.
Huh?
Your sense of humor.
And what's interesting is like many times our assets, when out of proportion, can also become liabilities, right?
Do you use it to deflect?
Sometimes I do. It's nothing like it used to be, but it's interesting to me. Like for me, if something floats up and, and I find myself, so like sarcasm, I'm a big fan of it. This is something my sponsor and I have been talking about this year, and he says, Ryan, you've been blessed with this ability of having uncanny sarcasm. And it's beautiful. It is definitely an asset. And what do they say in Spider-Man? With great power, Ryan, comes great responsibility.
Is that Spider-Man?
It is Spider-Man.
Uncle Ben.
Yeah, Uncle Ben, dude. Yeah, And but I can use it to deflect, and I can also use it to break the ice, because I think sometimes
that would be an asset.
I think so too.
So the deflection though is your part in that, you trying to like your goal of deflection is trying to move the focus, right?
Yeah. I'm confident that I do it. Here's, after working a few, 6 and 7 steps, all my character defects are still there. They're all still there. They're not going anywhere, and all my little neuroses, they're all still there. But the episodes are farther and fewer. The intensity is less.
So what that has to do with deflection?
Is that I'm confident that I still do it, but it's nothing like it used to be.
All right.
I've grown really comfortable with looking at my stuff. Another asset, like normalizing that we have feelings and we have thoughts and that life is confusing and messy. Like just normalizing, like, dude, we're all one and the same. Like if I zoom out far enough, we're all the same, we're all the same person in drag again, we're all just doing our best. We're all a bunch of bozos on the bus, we're all going to the same place, man, and let's try to have some fun. We're allowed to have fun here. This life is fun,
so
with and without drugs.
Your other assets, like, sometimes we like limit ourselves on our assets because we don't want to sound like we're all this.
Yeah.
But if we look at spiritual principles, we can, I'm speaking for myself, but I see it in you and you is that we can tick off all these spiritual principles. And if we're honest, we can, if we're honest, that's the key point. We can recognize that we pursue these spiritual principles.
Absolutely.
We pursue them.
Yep.
It's like the practice. And so you have some assets that you can share.
It's interesting because, it's always a weird thing to celebrate those things, because it's very egoic, right? But inside the truth is like I try to celebrate those things through my actions. But if I was just to talk about it, I'm aside from being weird, I have a lot of assets. I feel like a lot of my assets have come from the strife, trials, or tribulations. I feel blessed that I get an opportunity to experience hardship. We kind of talked about some father stuff, each one of us individually. And in the experience of that, it was very challenging, but I've learned to develop compassion and empathy and the ability to let others know their value. And I think a lot of that comes from my own experience of not having that, and,
Gotcha.
And so those challenges that I've faced have allowed me to be able to show up in spaces that I wish others had shown up for me. I experienced that in a very firsthand, and so there's I've got a lot of really great assets, compassion, empathy, humility. I know that I don't have it all figured out, and I am open to others and inviting others into the situations like that I might be facing, that I don't know it all. Open-mindedness allows such an amazing space for us to like really look. We talked about earlier, like maybe the social constructs of what it is to be masculine, and I remember when having a particular conversation with Ryan, and he's like, as men, we got this social idea that we need to have it all figured out, but like we don't have it fucking figured out. And it's like, oh, release, and like I can pass that now asset on to someone else. Is like, hey, bro, you don't have to have this all figured out.
Yeah,
I don't. It's I like to think I'm smart. I'm funny.
You're good enough. You're smart enough. And doggone it, people like you.
Yeah, right.
Guy Smiley?
Good job.
Guy Smiley. I don't know how that is.
Stuart.
Is it?
It's Stuart Smalley, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that who it was on Saturday Night Live? Yeah.
Oh, I can do
We're
it.
dating ourselves.
Yeah. I guess the best way to show the assets is through, one of the things I told my girl when I first started dating her is, don't listen to what I say, watch how I move.
I mean, you should use that theme throughout our lives, right?
Like I can talk a bunch of shit, a lot of people can talk a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
I will show up like that. And it's,
that's an asset in itself.
How I show up.
Consistency. Yeah. Being consistent in the way that we show up is really huge. And I think when I look at some assets of mine, I was just sitting here thinking, authenticity, consistency. Like I'm the same person right now that I am in a meeting, that I am at work, and my levels of intensity, I can get louder and I can talk faster or, but I've learned to be gentle with myself.
It's a hard one.
Which was something that really was really required for me.
You put the bat down?
I put the bat down.
For the most part.
And really looking at embracing all of me with, curiosity, with humor, with some self-compassion. And the truth is the better I treat myself, usually the way I treat others. It reflects in the way I treat others.
So that specifically can be attractive for others, especially like sponsees see that in you and it becomes attractive and they want to emulate that.
Yeah. And I think it's freedom, right? Like that's what we look for.
Do you feel that way?
Absolutely.
Like you see it in Ryan and go, I want to be like that.
Yeah. Cause like there were things I didn't go over on my first 4-step, when it talks with I'm like, yep, but I'm not talking about that.
Right.
But then
molestation. No, I'm serious.
I mean, that wasn't my story,
right?
But yeah, I mean, then he shared some of these things. Yeah,
can the person be?
And right, and the crazy thing is, it's like if he can do it, I can do it.
Yeah,
and I've had conversations where we talk about this being my immediate circle is the ripple effect, right?
Pebble in the pond.
Yes, it's like. Him showing up in that space allows me to show up in that space. When I talk to some of my guys, it's like, you know what? I actually do have some secrets. And as we've talked about this, I didn't write them down, but since you've talked about those things, I feel like I'm willing to share some things that have been hard for me. And then the follow-up conversations. And then I talk to someone about that. And, you end up hearing these stories later on down the road of how that initial impact to you pass to someone else, and they may never even know who the hell you are, but you had a rippling effect.
Have you experienced that? Like be at a meeting and some random person shares what you've shared with a sponsee?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Yes, I have, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see, but usually like I can't take any credit for any of this because
Not credit. No, we're not looking for that. But just acknowledging the fact that what you've passed down is
That
still
part.
alive.
So that part that you're talking about was the biggest thing, life-changing event for me in recovery. I remember I was like 9 months clean, and someone was talking about, I'm going to, start doing my steps like GC, and a couple members turned around and was like, look at GC inspiring people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the feeling of not knowing what I'm doing, but then that someone could see that as being a vocal point of inspiration.
Yeah.
In that singular moment, my life had purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to be a vessel and take information and like I've talked to him about it sometimes in my self-righteous space of like, I want to shake these people because they don't get it. And we need more people to be doing the fucking deal so that we can help more people. Cause like,
Settle down.
yeah, and it's like, okay, well, I had another addict that was sharing at a
Take
meeting.
your cape off.
Yeah, it's funny. He was sharing some of the same challenges, and he's like, you know what? But I realized my purpose is just to show that it can work for me. And I don't necessarily know who's going to impact.
Yeah.
It's just be the example. Be the example.
Yeah, one of the coolest things, I bring that up because one of the coolest things that happened to me recently is at a meeting and during discussion, somebody shared about the 2-foot drop. And I talk with my sponsees a lot about that because it's the best cure for whatever's you're going through, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's, anyways, and the person said, yeah, my sponsor talks to me about the 2-foot drop, from my head to my heart and blah, 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 and he explains the whole thing. And I had no idea who the guy is. And then it turns out it's like a great grand sponsee.
Yeah.
And that what was taught to me when I was new was the 2-foot drop. And that's, 30 plus years ago, has still, is still being pursued today.
Well, it's still valid. It's so valid.
Yeah.
What's neat for me, man, like the 4th step to me is, and it was the very beginning of a more meaningful relationship with myself, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I spent so many years hiding certain parts of Ryan from
Yeah.
the world because of shame, And I remember my first 4th step. We're supposed to be searching and fearless, right? I didn't experience that fearlessness. I have no idea. This shit's
Yeah.
terrifying. And I let my sponsor know, hey, there's some things on here, and I called him all the time. And one of the last questions of the inventory was there anything you left out? And he asked me that, and before we went to drop our step, it's like, is there anything left out? And I was like, yeah, there's a few things that I didn't want to write down. And he said, okay, write them down. And it was really difficult to open myself up in that way. And it went against everything that I had been conditioned to be, and it was the beginning of me finding myself within myself, and a few of these things that I shared with him on that step. He's like, okay, now we're going to burn these pages so no one ever knows, right? But the level of freedom that I got from that, especially the sexual inventory, because I've done some things that I'm not proud of in my active addiction.
But, okay, yeah, I see that.
And I share some of these things at group level,
Yeah.
that are taboo, right? And, and
When Ryan said taboo, he did air quotes.
I do. I love air quotes.
I like that you said you did that because taboo is, is like a social construct of what that is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And in reality, that's what people do.
You know, it's funny because Ryan was chairing at a barbecue event, and it was a year and a half ago, something like that. And he said something that really like resonated with me. It was like I was in this self-induced prison, and the keys were in my pocket the whole time. Mm-hmm. And it's like when we decide to dig in and grab a hold of what we do have and search within ourselves, like you realize like that when you talk about taboo, it's like that's the prison. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The quotes is the key,
Yeah.
right? It's interesting because social constructs and what's taboo. It's like these ideas, you know, fundamental change in our thoughts and in our behaviors. You know, it's like it's freedom.
And our secrets keep us sick. You know, my secrets kept me sick for many years.
That's what I want to point out is that secret that you kept, that air quotes taboo, in reality, because you were told.
Yeah, it was learned.
You were given.
Well, there's shame around it. There's shame.
Yeah.
So and I'll say this in front of however many viewers you have or listeners you have. Like, I'm a heterosexual male, and I use my body as currency with the same sex to get my drug of choice. And I share these things almost every single time I share a meeting. And the reason I do it is because it's not taboo. Many people have done it, you know, but I'll share that at group level, and I see people get really uncomfortable. I see men, you know, with their tattoos all over and tattoos on their face and shit, and, you know, and but I want to normalize these things. And honestly, that's sharing that kind of stuff.
Normalizing. So you saying tattoos on the face?
Oh, I thought you were going
stereotypical.
I thought you were going a different direction.
Oh, they're supposed to be so macho because they have tattoos on there.
Absolutely.
You know, it's funny because
most sensitive people in the world
Totally.
have tattoos
I
on their
agree.
face.
Yeah,
I agree.
Know, it's funny because you talk about those things. I've even had my own experience with people in anonymity, and I respect anyone's anonymity. But one of a very powerful moment in me in recovery was I was sharing my recovery out loud on social media, and I had people in my immediate circle, family, that were like, "Don't do that." And I get it, but you know, I had someone that was part of my high school group that reached out to me, and you know, a few people over the months to come that were like, "Can you help me? How have you gotten this?" You know?
Yeah.
And fuck, what an amazing gift it is. And so like I respect anyone's anonymity or their privacy around certain things, but it's crazy because I've found that the only way to break have the paradigm shift is to break through barriers.
That's a really big word, Greg.
You know, and you know, like I get that, you know, at face value, you know, people look at addicts and may have their own judgments and stuff like that. But when we really do this deal, it's like, that's your shit. And my God's got me, you know, so we respect what you need for you. But the truth is you sharing about those things, I know from my own experience and from those that have shared experiences with me, that you being open and vulnerable and open about those things, we're able to have others find keys in their pockets.
So that's the point that I was gonna make. Good point, Greg. Is that us sharing that vulnerability and like, so yeah, some of the stuff you don't need to go graphic, right? But it does save lives. Like
ripple effect,
like big picture.
Yeah.
I've shared at a meeting about having 28 years clean and wanting to commit suicide. Mm-hmm. And that feeling in my soul, in my gut, it just tearing me apart, and I don't want to live anymore. And then going and sharing about going through the process. Somebody else, you know, a week later came up to me and said, "What you shared saved my life because I was going to commit suicide."
Yeah.
You know,
Power
same
of
thing.
that.
And same thing with me. Somebody in my circle many years ago shared about being touched as a kid at group level which like nowadays we hear a lot about it. Yeah, air quotes. But because that friend shared about being touched at group level, as a kid,
It opens the door.
Yeah, and it made it okay for me to talk about being
Yeah.
molested as a kid. It's like I saved that for 28 years.
Yeah.
That secret,
Yep.
28 years
In recovery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy because when we were in some of the stuff that we were working through, I was at this weird impasse of spirituality.
You and Ryan?
Yeah. And I'm like, this religion that I'm starting to follow because this is what I've familiarized myself with is really having a conflict. And he really introduced me to like, okay, well, you're looking for someone that's, Christian with this amount of time. It sounds like you're looking for a biased opinion. Like, what do you say? What does your God say? And he like really what it is to me. Right. And through that process of discovering spirituality and a really personal relationship with the God of my understanding, like it made me realize that yes, I mean, we all have an opportunity we talked about spiritual deposits. Mm-hmm. You do certain things. And so when you're bringing up the situation that was inside for a long time, you were able to be a vessel in that. And sometimes we get the opportunity of having someone else that says thank you, when reality is like you don't necessarily know where or why you ended up doing that thing, but you got to see that you had a purpose and you got to be a vessel. And you talk about assets, it's like that's a fucking asset to be able to be a vessel in some way, you know what I mean? And you never know who it's going to touch or reach. And sometimes you don't get the benefit of ever knowing, but sometimes you do. And it's like, yes, give me more of that. I'm a dopey and that feels good. So I want more of that.
Yeah, I guess that's a great example of like us walking through fear of being found out and being vulnerable and being humble. Can be like a catalyst for somebody else's propulsion into their recovery.
Well, those are some of the things that were really attractive to me. When I would hear people share, either at group level or in discussion, things that I would normally, I'm taken to the grave.
Secrets,
and they're just part of our story.
Right.
And as an addict in recovery, it's my responsibility to honestly share my story and to normalize like, hey, as long as I keep that a secret, I keep that in the dark, it's going to keep me sick,
Yeah. And, like talking about your situation, looking at it from a different perspective, you were talking about killing yourself, taking away the light that Kevin has. Mm-hmm. And instead, you brought it to the surface. And that light saves another life. And like, had you ended it, right? That's how many people then? Because maybe that light gets passed.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like choosing light over dark, Like it's interesting
That
because
sounds like a movie. The battle between light and dark.
it's funny because I was thinking about I remember one of these things I put up because it was like, oh my God, I had this like epiphany, right? Is that there's different levels of darkness, right? Like there's like, I can see like maybe 10 feet in front of you to like, I can't even see my hand right in front of my face, So when I'm inspecting, like I get super analytical about the shit. It's like, that means that there's still lightness in that dark, And then I remember like, I want to go into the darkest place and extract anything I can from that, It's, I don't know. It's aggressive pursuit, right?
What a great imagination. Like that's all right, cool. All right, so we're getting close to the end here, and I warned you guys that we're gonna I want to pull out some of these stories, like chaos or happy or funny, something very, very traumatic, whatever you guys want to share. But Give us some juicy stuff.
You my sling blade.
Well, he did say juicy, so I'll let you go ahead and start there.
We were talking, but so when you brought that up, I'm like, man, I got so many stories of.
What's the biggest one? That you
I
remember?
saw what ended up making drawing to a point was not too far from here. I remember we were tripping. We were on acid.
We as in you
me
and
and friends.
cohorts?
Me and my friends. Yeah.
He said cohorts.
Yeah. So we had taken the time my girlfriend's mom's car, her LeBaron convertible, and there's like 6 or 7 of us that fit into this 5-seater. So when we got on, we were going to Salmon Falls in California, Salmon Falls Bridge, and it's a windy road. And at some point we're like, oh, we should be sitting on the trunk, of the car and then the hood. We got out to Salmon Fall Bridge, and we were, just super high. We were like, oh, you know what? I was like, we should midnight jump off the bridge. And so I, took my pants off, my shirt, and I climbed off this bridge and onto this little pillar that you jump from. And I jumped into pure black, And I remember that was probably the scariest time that I'd done it, because it's like, holy shit, this is really like, when is it I'm going to hit the water,
Maybe.
What? Yeah. I'm looking down, and so that I at least can see, because I couldn't see the water at all. I'm just jumping into pure black. And then I figured I would have enough time that at least I would see the water before I hit, I hit the water, but my face was pointed down because I was looking down at my feet, and water filled my eyes. Like it felt like I had like softballs. I literally ran my palms down, felt all the water come out, and I'm yelling to the guys like, "Don't do it! Don't do it!" So, and then I'm hearing around me, and we all did this jump or whatever. We went back up, and we got in the bear, and we headed home. And the next morning, I'm like, I don't know where my wallet's at. And it's like, fuck. I bet you anything when I picked up my pants, it fell out. And so we went back out to the bridge in my truck, and there was absolutely no water except for in that spot that we jumped.
Are you shitting me?
And wow.
It was like a pool in rocks.
Yep. And it's to this day, it still rocks me like more today than it did, because it's like, holy shit, bro. But then it's like, let's just, go on with our lives. But
that could have been death.
It could have been death for all of us. Yeah. And just fearless, reckless abandon, and the interesting thing is that I look at those moments now today as a father. It's like, fuck, dude, my kid's going to do some dumb shit. Like, I don't even know how I lived through those experiences.
All of us say that.
And wow, I did some dumb shit that, even in the moment I'd be like, wow, bro, that's fucking crazy. And then, next weekend we'd be doing the same stupid shit,
Yeah. Well, the listeners really want to know.
Yeah.
Did you find your wallet?
I did find my wallet.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
It was there on the bridge?
It was there on the bridge. Yes, it was.
That you almost died on?
That we almost all died on.
That's a near-death experience.
Yeah.
That you just blew off and went and did more near-death shit the next weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty graphic as far as like...
It's a bit, I don't know if you know about Salmon Falls Bridge, but it's like a 60-foot bridge or something like that.
Yeah.
It's pretty high up there. Man, you seen how dry those rocks were. It's like, wow. Wow, that'd have been messy. That would have been messy.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a good one. Brian, can you top that?
Oh, this isn't a competition.
Yes, it is.
Listen to the sponsor in him. He just sponsored us.
There's many stories like that. The one that impacted me the most was right before I got clean the first time. And, I'm from Los Angeles, and
Is that where you grew up?
Yeah. And, my ex and I moved to Sacramento to get away from methamphetamine, right? Because that was my problem.
And they don't have any in Sacramento.
I didn't realize that they did. And then 15 years later, I fucked around and found out, you know. But after my divorce and everything, you know, I was just going to do the more socially acceptable things. I was going to drink alcohol and smoke weed, you know. And I never realized, you know, that like how damaging it was. Alcohol that actually brought me to my knees. Mm-hmm. But I remember one day waking up at home. No, I didn't. I wasn't at home. I woke up somewhere near Reading, and I was beat to shit. I was in somebody's bed. I have no idea who she was, and I woke up and felt like death.
But you started in Sacramento?
Yeah, I was living in Orangevale at the time,
and
as a matter of fact.
You have no idea how you got at the time to Reading?
I had no idea how I got there, but I woke up and I literally was, you know, there was blood on me, and there were stickers, and there were, you know, rocks and gravel like in my hair. This is back when I had hair, and all over my clothes. Like I was a mess, and I really hurt. And it was early enough in the morning where the sun wasn't out all the way. And I get to my car, and apparently my car I left it running, and so the battery was dead, you know, and I was like, what's going on? How did I get here? Who is this person? You know? And I have no idea how I got there. I didn't know where I was. And I remember getting cables, and went in and grabbed someone who's on the couch their keys to start their car, to jump my car, and I left. And I started doing the GPS thing, and I was like, I'm way far away. And I started at Orangevale. I started at Jan's Bar, or Jan's Lounge.
Like 4.5 hours, something like that.
And I have no idea how I got there. You know, which means, and I drove.
Oh wow!
Like I
drove 4.5
there,
hours in a blackout.
You know, and I had a busted lip, and I had a shiner, and I had shit all over me. I was filthy. It looked like I rolled half a mile down like a gravel road. and there was throw up in my car, and there was like, it was so messy. And that was how it, and that was before this time, actually. I had been introduced to recovery before that. And it wasn't the first time that something like that happened, you know?
So what happened?
I still don't know.
You're kidding me.
No, I don't know.
Oh, that story,
cliffhanger?
Yeah.
Really?
Well,
come
listen.
on.
At least say it was Kaiser Soze or something.
Kaiser Soze.
Oh.
You know, and well, I think that's more terrifying than anything.
So
like,
you don't even today, you don't know who?
No, because they
Reading?
weren't my friends. I'm assuming that I met this person at the bar, and
I want to know how you ended up the way you did.
I don't know. Isn't that more terrifying? Like, you know, but that was the last time that was the last time I put in, you know?
Oh, that's the language. See, I forgot
Put in.
what I was,
Oh, put in. Yeah. You know?
That means get loaded.
Yeah.
It does?
So, just kidding. It does.
I know the language.
You know, and I went home and I was scared because I remember thinking, because there was blood on my car and in my car, and I had blood on me.
That's crazy.
And I was like, did I hit somebody? What is this? What's going on? You know? And it scared me. It shook me to my core, you know? And having zero recollection. And that's what got me to stop drinking at the time. And it was really difficult, you know? And then
that is scary, huh?
it is.
Yeah. Blackout.
It was terrifying. You
Yeah,
know, what did I do?
Yeah.
You know?
I've had one blackout, and I had a really short period of getting loaded, and then at one incident the following day, my buddy said, "Yeah, you jumped through a window to get to your girlfriend," and I'm like, "I did." That's scary stuff. Like I would normally jump through a window.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Anyway, so that is kind of scary.
It's very scary, you know. And then 2 days later, I found myself in a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous on a midnight on a
2 days
Saturday.
later?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep. I posted on Facebook that, okay, I'm going to try this again. and people started reaching out to me that I knew from the rooms before.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
And I literally had friends. I said, okay, I'll go with you guys to a meeting tonight. And then they came to pick me up, and then I didn't want to go. I felt terrible, and they ended up jumping the fence to my apartment and running around, and it was literally like a rescue mission. And they knocked at the door and like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm busy. I was trying to weasel my way out of it. And they ended up taking me to a meeting a midnight meeting on a Saturday in like Carmichael or something like that, or Fair Oaks. And that's when I heard my sponsor speaking. And he was talking about how he uses the principles of this program to create alternative options for himself. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, what's that?
Do I know your sponsor?
You do. My first sponsor.
Oh,
his name is Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yes, you do.
Yeah.
And he shared some things that was very attractive to me. Like manly men don't talk about stuff like this. And I was like, this dude has something different. He has, and I didn't know it then, but now when I look back, I'm like, he had freedom. He had freedom from self. Mm-hmm. And to me, that was really, really attractive. And he shared the solution. It didn't make sense to me. It was like it was a foreign language. But I was like, whatever you're doing, he has the secret sauce. And I want to know what the recipe is to that sauce. And this motherfucker knows it. So I asked him to sponsor me. Yeah.
That's very cool. Very cool. How's your relationship today, you two?
Really good. I mean, it's
this fucking guy.
Friendship, sponsorship. It's interesting because I feel like it gets to a point where it's not like for lack of a better way of putting it, it's not like a boss employee thing anymore.
Right. It's a friendship.
It's a friendship. Yeah. And I know that I know I can call him whenever I need. I mean, there are times that, he calls and talks to me about some stuff, one of the beautiful things about our program is there's no hierarchy, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Or there's not supposed to be.
There's not supposed to be, right?
There are people that throw others on pedestals, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's funny, man, is that I remember a couple of years ago, shortly after you and I were working together.
Greg put you on a pedestal?
No, just that another member at a meeting, I think I called you, and we just talked how we talk. And another member said, "Is that your sponsee?" I was like, "Yeah." He said, "You call your sponsees?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like,
yeah.
"Why do you do that?" I'm like, "What do you mean? I really didn't get it." He's like, "I don't call my sponsees. It's their job to call me, and my sponsees are not my friends."
I've ran across that before,
and I've run into it a bunch, but it doesn't compute for me.
Right,
it just doesn't compute.
So
man,
that brings up like we have literature, the book Sponsorship.
Yeah, have
you ever read it?
Yeah.
So that book is like so underrated, and I really, really like it.
I don't.
Me neither. Now I have to go back.
I don't like it.
It's a whole book on hundreds and hundreds of different people's experience on how to sponsor and how they do it and everything. And
I'm gonna have to give it a second glance.
The truth is I had expectations of what it would be, and then when it was just sharing stories, I'm like, this doesn't tell you how to be a sponsor.
It's not supposed to.
Right? I still don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
So that's the point I'm making. When I read that thing, that's when because I used to be the literature rep for an area. This was a long time ago. And when that book came out, as literature rep, I had to store the books. Mm-hmm. Right. And I could only smoke in the garage. I couldn't smoke in the house when I smoked. So I went out to the garage and I smoked and read literature because that's where I stored it. And so that book, I read the whole thing every time I went out and smoked, and it changed my entire perception on sponsorship. Because I was taught this is how it's done. This is what we do. Blah, 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 all the structure and sponsorship. Yeah. And when I read that book, I was like, holy shit, we get to decide how we sponsor.
Yeah.
The sponsee gets to decide how they want to work the steps. And so now I ask all my sponsees, when they go, I want to work the steps or whatever they're doing, like, how do you want to do it? I'm not the one that's going to tell you how to work your steps.
Remember, it took us a few weeks to figure out what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Here are the options, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, and at the same time, too, like, I can only give what I've gotten, you know, but I'm also willing, like, to work. You know, I've had people ask me, what about this book? You know, and some of these books are not Narcotics
Right,
Anonymous related, right? And in a
Yeah.
meeting, I don't talk about this stuff. But
This isn't a meeting.
yeah, I know it isn't. So
Sweet.
I'm comfortable talking about this. You know, I'm willing to, if I'm going to work something, if a sponsee of mine says, I want to work these steps this way out of this book, you know, and I've never done it, then okay, then we're going to do this together. You know,
I like that.
Let's do this together.
Yeah.
You know,
This is an example of like, I'm holding up these worksheets. Josh he teases me about these. This is non-NA approved worksheets on all the steps and on all the traditions. And with a lot of sponsees, when they work the steps out of the workbook, and then they go, okay, I don't ever want to do that again. Yeah. Some people love it. They want to do it all the time, but I like to give them options.
Yeah.
And this is one of the options that I give them.
yeah.
It's funny because he and I, but is he talking about some of these things? Like he gives me elective assignments a lot, and I'm like, oh, cool, more stuff. And even though as we're approaching, taking the 11th and starting to roll into the 12th step on this journey together, like I've read like 4 or 5 different books that he's like, I encourage you or recommend that you take a look at this. And so there's so many different ways within this round of actual Narcotics Anonymous steps that we've gone off on these.
I love it.
Yeah. And there's so many amazing tools that I feel like I've gotten beyond even what our, the actual
literature.
workbook has.
Yeah.
That really identifying like, I wanted to work the feeling steps. And I remember one of the things I was telling him is like,
Sir, you're going to have to explain what the feeling steps. You can't just drop that on air and then
okay, so
right past
so the feeling steps is, and we replaced drugs for our emotions.
Okay.
And so he presented me a feelings wheel and want you to.
feelings wheel.
Yeah. So if you can even Google a feelings wheel, right? There's like 5.
There's going to be some butthurt people.
Yeah.
About this whole, it's a thing. To be clear,
Yeah.
I did not work all 12 feeling steps. I worked 4. I worked 1 through 4.
Is there a reason you stopped?
I ended up shifting sponsorship.
Okay.
I ended up shifting sponsorship. It was just time, and we both agreed. But I can tell you that it was a huge gift. And
The feeling steps?
the feeling steps, and what the focus is on, we're not supposed to give away the secret sauce, but I don't give a shit where if there's a teaching,
Ripple it
and
out,
it can
bro.
improve the quality of my life or someone else's life.
So
Like I'm
what
not
are
gonna,
the feeling steps?
basically at the end of the day, I'm powerless over feelings. And my thoughts have become unmanageable,
Yeah.
And there's a process that we do, but for me, what it really does is it helps me tap into reality, not attached to the story that my head's telling me,
Right.
to zoom out, to observe the experience I'm having and create that space, to separate myself, because I am not my feelings. I am not my thoughts. I am just a human having a human experience.
Yeah, you're the CEO that gets to decide what all the members of the board are talking about.
Yeah, and it's a way to
Interesting.
detach from the chaos.
I like it.
Right.
Okay,
So
cool.
yeah, from the inception of it, it was with working with him. It was like, okay, so what's the feeling? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, where do you feel it? I'm like, it's like a pressure in the front of my head. It's like, no, you don't feel feelings in your head. You feel it in your body. All the way to recognizing what a feeling is, how it moves through me, what my brain wants to tell me to problem solve the experience. How did these feelings come to be? Oh my gosh, I went into mindfulness practice of understanding that, the first 5 years of my development, I created programming. So I can
First 5 years of your development
of my life. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So the first 5 years of our life is where 95% of our pain body will come from. So I've had experiences with my relationship that I know what the fuck this is because I've been through all this. I didn't even have a conscious thought. Something was said. It invoked a response because that's my wiring. That's my programming. Now my brain is in this lens of this emotion and how I'm showing up. It's like you're learning to zoom out in these spaces and understand, okay, well, now let's get into some mindfulness. Like in order to change the programming, you need to first observe the programming. And then you start, oh, fuck. When I walk into situations like this, it's because of that. And I think I know what this is, but then let's insert some curiosity.
God,
what
you're
is
going
this?
deep.
Oh, dude, it's like it. I mean,
really deep.
It got into so many different avenues of exploration and who I want to be, how I want to show up. Do I let the outside world affect that? Yes, I do. When does that happen?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's all peeling that onion.
Cool. Well, I mean, whatever works, right? That's my philosophy.
And that's what I ask guys too. When people want to work steps with me, I ask them, if they're new, I keep it pretty simple, because the goal is clear. Let's not get loaded.
Yeah.
Let's just not get loaded today, right?
Yeah, I can't help you.
But if it's somebody who's already been clean for a while, and and they are moving on in sponsorship, or maybe they've been clean for a couple of years and have never worked all 12 steps and never experienced sponsorship. My question is, hey, what do you want out of the next 2 years? What is your objective for working the steps? Where is your pain? Let's get clear. Let's get clear on what you want to accomplish, what you want out of working the steps. And then we can decide what type of work we do.
Yeah. That's very interesting. I love that willingness to travel outside of the boundaries.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times that's where we find answers.
And all my guys too, I always ask them the same thing because it was pivotal for me. It's like, hey, what kind of man do you want to be?
Man.
What kind of man do you want to be?
Yeah, he actually had me write a eulogy, write what I would want someone to say at my funeral. How do I want to be remembered?
Yeah.
That was really impactful for me because I felt like I was at, kind of just bobbing along. I got to get really intentional with how I wanted to be remembered. And do I exude the behaviors that would reflect that?
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's kind of interesting because in the exploration of having a very focused point of direction, there were some things that in actual practice, I realized where those values that were instilled with me aren't going to follow the same principles I feel good about. And so, we examined the difference between a value and a principle.
Yep.
And as I'm on this path to this, I found out that even though I had a target, is that actually moved in practice.
Yeah.
And
Good.
it was a beautiful blossoming, for lack of a better way of putting it, because maybe some of the ideas that I had, as I guess many of us experience in recovery, they change.
Yeah, I try to share that with people that I sponsor. Is staying present and living in the now is a common thing for me. Theme. And they're like, well, what about goals? Don't you have to have goals? And I like, you know what? Goals are objective.
They can be important.
Subjective.
They
right?
are subjective. Yeah.
Subjective. That's the word I meant.
Yeah.
And exactly what you said. You can have a goal and strive for that, and
But
then
not
along
at the expense of the present moment.
Yeah. Fluidity.
And then along the way, either you're missing something or you see something, and you take a detour, and that goal no longer exists because this detour is badass.
Right. And here's what's beautiful about that. I've had so many experience. That's God's will. because it's like,
Nice. Yeah, great.
because it's like
Pivot.
I had my direction, and it's like there are so many things I've shared with him. It's like, he's like, so why are you exploring that? I'm like, I have no fucking clue, bro, but I'm just being called that way.
Yeah.
And I know what it's like to go with the flow, and I know what it's like to be steadfast in a direction that is fighting current. And it is the difference between my will and God's will.
Nice.
And I can have a target, but fluidity,
Cool.
follow the flow.
Well, guys, I really appreciate you coming out today, and this has been a really good episode.
And it's been fun too.
Yeah.
appreciate
you
you
guys
for having
feel
us.
good about it?
Yeah.
Right on.
I'll answer later after I get to hear the episode.
Are you going to listen to it?
Oh, absolutely. He's gonna. Yeah. He'll probably make
I don't want
a sample of
you to
something that he said that
text
was
me or call me, after it comes out and go, oh, I shouldn't have said that, because that's the worst hindsight ever. Then you're not in God's will.
Yeah.
See, I'll have this little moment on the drive home where I'm going to point something out. Because as a sponsee, just as friend to friend, I was like, when you said that? I'm going to plant a little seed.
Nice. All right, guys, I love you.
Love you, Kevin.
Thanks, everybody,
Thank you.
for
Thanks for
listening.
having us.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. Often you will hear addicts referring to a specific 12-step program or rehab. These are personal stories. We do not represent any of the programs.